My name's Dan Mulligan. I'm not actually a judge, but I have over 20 years in law enforcement as a police officer, commander of some specialized units. So Ms. Wilson asked me, since the actual judge has gone to a full-time law career, isn't able to sit in, I'm the next best thing. And I appreciate that, because last year we had so much fun and we just did such a great job. This group that is sitting here as attorneys were sitting where you guys were sitting last year. They did just a wonderful job, and you guys are going to see what a great job they do as well. We're going to have fun with this first and foremost, but they're going to take it seriously. As you look around at the jury pool and all the parents, if you were in an actual courtroom setting, you'd see just as many, if not more, maybe up to 100 jurors, depending on the type of case. If it's a murder case like this is, or a suspected murder case, you may have as many as 100 jurors, because we want to really have a big pool to pull from. The first thing you're going to see the attorneys do is voir dire, and Ms. Wilson said you guys are all familiar with that, but I'll refresh your memories, or maybe some of the parents don't know what that is. Voir dire it's Latin for to speak the truth, and the purpose of voir dire is to select potential jurors from the veneer, from the area. And it's done by asking specific questions, either by a judge or the attorneys, to determine their suitability for jury service. Prior to being selected, all of the jurors will fill out a jury questionnaire. And that questionnaire will go to the attorneys, and they will then pick which ones they think are most favorable to their case, or who they think will be the most honest or best candidates for their jury pool. And they'll go back and forth, and they each get to pick a side, and you guys will see how that goes on. By asking these questions again, they're looking for which potential jurors would look most favorably upon their case. So if attorneys, you're ready, we will begin with voir dire.
This is going to crackle.
Please stand if you or anyone in your family works in law enforcement. Please stand if you have a younger sibling.
You may be seated.
You may be seated. Please stand if you have heard of the aviator Charles Lindbergh. Please be seated. Stand if you have ever gone into work for something you did not do. Please be seated. Please stand if you've ever lost someone in your family. Please be seated. Stand if you have ever taken something valuable from someone without them knowing. Please stand if you are familiar with carpentry or woodwork. Please be seated.
Please stand if there was ever a time you had to defend somebody.
Please be seated. Please stand if you or your family has immigrated from another country.
Please stand if someone has ever asked you to keep something for them.
Please be seated.
You have something to give the judge.
I need your jury selection. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury pool, when I call your number, and you all have a number on your shirt, you have been selected for jury duty. And you will come, and Ms. Wilson will direct you to where you will be seated. 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113. 201, 202, 203, 204, 205, 206, 207, 208, 209, 210, 211, 212. 301, 302, 303, 304, 305, 306, 307, 308, 309, 310, 311.
306. Audience members are free to move forward. You need to move the desk up.
Everybody ready to proceed? All right. Prosecution, you may begin with your opening statement.
Your Honor, may I please approach the jury?
Yes, you may.
It was a relaxing day on March 1st, 1932, but a disastrous night in the Lindbergh family. The father of the family, Charles, was at a meeting. Charlie Jr., the son of the family, was sick with a cold, and the mother of the family, Anne, was hanging out with their child. That night, Charlie Jr. was stolen from the house of the Lindberghs and caused mass chaos within the household. The mother and father will testify against Bruno Hauptmann for brutally murdering their child. You will hear from a handwriting expert who will prove that Bruno wrote the ransom notes. You will hear from a gas station attendant who is paid with gold certificates. You will hear from a nursemaid of the household who helped take care of the sweet boy. You will hear from a wood expert who can prove that the wood on the ladder matches Bruno's attic. You will hear from a police officer who is called to work for the kidnapping. You will hear from a physician who will present how the baby died. You will hear from a taxi driver who delivered a note to Dr. Condon from Hauptmann. Please, the people of the jury, I beg you to give a guilty verdict to Bruno Hauptmann for murdering an innocent child.
Defense, you may proceed with your opening statement.
Your Honor, may I please approach the jury?
Yes, you may.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered in this courtroom to find the truth about a kidnapping and murder case. On the night of Tuesday, March 1st, 1932, between 8 and 10 p.m., Charles Augustus Lindbergh Jr. was stolen away from his bedroom near Hopewell, New Jersey. A ransom note was found in the nursery, and a total of 13 were delivered in the following weeks. The baby was found dead 4.5 miles from his home, roughly 2 months later. An autopsy showed that he had been dead for 2 months, meaning that he had been killed shortly after the kidnapping. On September 19, 1934, Mr. Bruno Richard Hauptmann was arrested for allegedly kidnapping and murdering the child. I and my fellow attorneys on the defense are here to prove that Mr. Hauptmann is not guilty of the terrible crime for which he has been accused of. The evidence will show that Mr. Hauptmann was not anywhere near the Lindbergh residence at the time of the kidnapping, nor was he at the cemetery when the ransom was exchanged. We will prove that this hardworking father had no involvement with the kidnapping of Charles Jr. You will hear from Mr. Hauptmann's loving wife, Anna, who will testify that her husband was with her on the night of the kidnapping. You will hear from Mr. Sam Chapone, who can identify the recipient of the Lindbergh ransom. Was not the defendant Bruno Hauptmann. You will hear Mr. Peter Sommer reveal the identity of the true kidnapper. You will also hear from Mr. Hans Kloppenberg, who can testify to the whereabouts of Mr. Hauptmann the night the ransom money was exchanged. Then you will hear from a handwriting expert, who will prove that Mr. Hauptmann was not the writer of the ransom notes. You will even hear from Mr. Hauptmann, who has nothing to hide and wants to tell you the truth himself. As we come to a close at the end of this trial, we plead that you recall the time. Remember that Mr. Hauptmann immigrated from Germany to a country living with fear of the rise of Hitler and Nazi Germany. Remember that the police force jumped to an unsupported conclusion. Please, reach an agreement and deliver the right verdict. Bruno Richard Hauptmann is not guilty of the kidnapping and murder of Charlie Lindbergh Jr.
their first witness.
Prosecution would like to call our first witness, Charles Lindbergh, to the stand.
Colonel Lindbergh, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth within the rules of the mock trial?
I do.
You may be seated. Prosecution, when you're ready.
Mr. Lindbergh, please state your name and occupation.
My name is Charles Lindbergh Jr. I'm Charles Lindbergh. I'm a pilot and the aviator.
Can you share some background info about yourself?
My father died a couple years ago, and my mother is fortunately still alive today. I was born on February 4th in Detroit, Michigan, and I spent most of my childhood in Washington, D.C., where my father was a congressman.
And where do you currently reside?
Englewood, New Jersey.
And what made you so well known as an aviator?
I participated against several other pilots and won a prize. I won $25,000 and lots of fame.
Did you receive any special rewards for your act?
I immediately became a hero and received many prestigious medals.
On the weekend of March 1st, did you and your baby stay at the Hopewell Estate?
Yes,
How often do you stay at the Hopewell Estate?
we stay on weekends because it was recently broke.
And who would have known that you were staying there?
We told the staff about the change in plans, but I can show you that had nothing to do with the kidnapping.
And where were you on the night of the kidnapping?
I spent most of the day in New York, and I came home and joined my wife for dinner in the kitchen at 8:30.
And what did you do after dinner?
We went into the living room, which is next to the kitchen, and began talking on the sofa.
Did you hear anything unusual or out of place coming from upstairs?
At around 9:10, I heard what seemed like kitchen-like planks falling to the ground, but I had little curiosity about it and didn't bother to check what it was.
What happened after you heard the noise from upstairs?
Me and Ann went upstairs and kept on talking until I took a bath and went to the library to read.
When did you hear or notice that the baby was missing?
Miss Gal, the baby's caregiver, came running in, asked if I knew where the baby was at around 10. And rushing into the baby's room, I noticed that the sheets were still pinned to the bed.
What was significant about the sheets being pinned to the bed?
It meant that someone stole my baby. We called the police, and later that night, the New Jersey police came to investigate.
Did the kidnapper try to contact you in any way?
Ms. Gal found a ransom letter on the windowsill where the baby was kidnapped from.
Were there any other attempts at reaching you or any more ransom letters?
I received many letters from people asking to be a go-between between me and the kidnapper. I found one of those people intriguing.
Who is this person?
His name is John Condon. He offered his services, and I willingly accepted. He and the kidnapper had already talked, and they decided to meet at the cemetery.
Where'd you go for the night of the negotiation?
I dropped Condon off to meet with John at Bergen Greenhouse.
What happened upon arrival?
A man called out, "Hey Doc," in a German accent, and John got out of the car. Dr. John Condon got out of the car to meet with the man named John.
And what happened later that night?
They had the negotiation to exchange for my baby's whereabouts, and I saved $20,000 that night, since when Condon gave the money, John only accepted $50,000 after being raised to $70 grand.
Did you do anything so as to identify the ransom collector afterwards?
We gave Condon only gold certificate bills, so that when something is purchased with them, we will find the kidnapper.
Did you find out where your baby was located?
Condon found out that he was on a boat called Nellie, and I personally went out to search for it by plane, but didn't find anything. Neither did the authorities.
When did you next get an update on your baby's whereabouts?
I was notified a day later that my baby was found dead by a truck.
So Mr. Condon did give John the ransom money only in gold certificate bills?
Yes.
And who do you think committed this crime?
I know for a fact that was this man, Bruno Hauptmann.
And how are you so sure?
I heard his voice during the night of negotiation call out, "Hey Doc," in a German accent that I know it was Bruno Hauptmann.
Is that man who you are sure stole and murdered your baby in this courtroom today?
Yes.
May you point him out for the jury?
Identify for the record.
Identify for the record.
That just means that you identify the defendant. It's officially on record that he is identified as the one that he believes.
Oh, okay. All right. So should I just say?
Then proceed.
Okay. What-
You can proceed with your questions.
Okay, no further questions.
Okay. Cross-examination?
Hello, Mr. Lindbergh. How are you today?
I'm good.
I would like to sincerely apologize for the death of your child before we begin. I want to start with a little bit about your childhood. Did you have any brothers or sisters growing up? Had a lot of friends, anyone that you like to spend time with? Were you often by yourself?
Pretty much. I spent my like mechanical and stuff.
Okay. So is it correct to assume that you're not used to having younger children around you? You're also a pilot?
Yes.
You've done many solo flights, is that correct?
Yes.
You succeeded your long flight to Paris when many more experienced pilots had failed.
Yes.
You became a hero in the eye of the American people from doing so. How many awards do you know that did you win for your flight?
Well, I won many. It's too much to recall.
Okay. Do you believe that being an American hero puts you above the law?
No.
Okay. So on the day of the crime, you were in New York, is that correct?
Yes.
Were you with anyone? Can anyone say that you were there for sure?
People I had a meeting with.
Okay. What did you do while you were in New York?
I had a meeting.
Were you alone?
No.
Okay. So you came home from New York around dinner, is that correct?
Yes.
You were eating with Ann Lindbergh, your wife.
Yes.
What did you do after dinner?
We went to the living room and talked on the sofa.
Okay. Did you hear anything unusual?
Yeah.
What was it that you heard?
It was like falling out of wood.
Okay. You didn't think to go and check to see what was going on?
No.
Okay. Is that very responsible? Do you think maybe you should have checked?
I probably should have.
Okay. So when Mrs. Gao came into the library and asked you if you had baby, what was your initial reaction?
I was panicking. I wanted to know what happened to my baby.
Okay. Did you go to the nursery right away?
Yes.
Okay. So you were concerned, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. After the kidnapping of the baby, people offered to be the go-between, is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. John Condon was one of them.
Yes.
Did you know that Mr. Condon had actually made contact with the killer?
No. He said so.
Is it true that you were with Mr. Condon when he met with John?
Yes.
Can you be sure that Mr. Condon actually made contact with the killer before you met?
No.
So you are not sure if this was a stage transfer or not?
No.
When you went to search for the boat, what was it called again?
Nellie?
Okay, you did not find it, is that correct?
No.
Did the authorities find it either?
No.
Okay. And was Mr. Condon the only one to hear the name of the boat firsthand?
No.
Okay. So, that's all.
Any redirect? Any additional questions based on close? Okay. Colonel Lindbergh, you may step down. Prosecution may call your next witness.
Prosecution would like to call Lindbergh to the stand.
Ms. Lindbergh, Mrs. Lindbergh, come on up. Before you're seated, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth within the rules of democracy?
I do.
Okay, you may be seated. Make sure you speak into the microphone. So, Counsel, you may begin when you're ready.
Can you please state your name and share some information about your background?
My name is Ann Lindbergh. I was born in Englewood, New Jersey on June 22nd, 1906. My father is a Republican senator, and my mother is a school teacher and a poet. I graduated Smith College when I was 22 and married Charles Lindbergh when I was 21, and got my glider pilot's license when I was 23.
So you are, in fact, the wife of Charles A. Lindbergh.
Yes, yes, I am.
Where do you reside?
Legally, we reside in Hopewell, but I'm currently living in Englewood.
Could you please tell the court more information about your two residents?
My husband and I were building a house in Hopewell. Until the house was finished, we would live in Englewood, and we would stay at the house in Hopewell on the weekends.
And is the house in Hopewell the house you occupied on March 1st, 1932?
Yes, it is.
Can you tell the court about the occupants of the house on March 1st? It was a Tuesday.
Me and my son, Charlie Jr., Elsie and Oliver Wheatley, who work for us, and later in the afternoon, Miss Betty Gow, who also works for us. And later that evening, my husband, Charles, came home.
And how old was Charlie?
About 20 months.
Did anything suspicious happen that afternoon?
Nothing that I recall in the afternoon. No.
So everything was well and normal in the household?
Charlie had a cold, but besides that, everything was well and normal.
Can you tell the court about the afternoon on March 1st, 1932?
I put Charlie down for a nap at around 1 o'clock, and Miss Betty Gow came home at around 1:30. After that, I went for a short 15 to 30-minute walk. And when I came home, I walked around the driveway of the house under Charlie's window, and it was muddy, so I left some footprints, and I threw like a small stone, a pebble, up to the window to catch the attention of Miss Betty Gow, who was in the bedroom, and she took Charlie and showed him to the window to me so I could say hi. And then I went back inside, up to the bedroom to say hi in person, and then back down to the sitting room.
What about later that evening? Tell us about that.
At around 5 o'clock, I was in the sitting room with Charlie.
Did Charlie feel any better?
He definitely looked like he was getting over his cold, better than he had the previous days.
Around what time did you put Charlie to bed?
At around 6:15, Miss Betty Gow and I started getting him ready up in the nursery, and he was in bed at around 7:15, 7:30.
Can you tell us about the house after you put Charlie in the bed?
I went to a desk a few doors down from the nursery, and then my husband came home at around 8:25, 8:30, and we ate dinner, and then at around 10 o'clock, we went upstairs to the bedroom to start getting ready, and then he went back downstairs to the library.
Did anybody interrupt?
I asked Miss Wheatley to get me some lemonade, but before she could, Miss Betty Gow came running into my room, asking me if I knew where the baby was.
What did you do after you learned the baby was gone?
I ran into the nursery and I frantically searched the room. I saw that his bed was empty, and so I went back into my bedroom to see Charlie and Miss Betty Gow.
What were your husband and Betty Gow doing?
Charles was grabbing a rifle to go outside and search with Mr. Wheatley.
What was Betty Gow doing?
I do not recall.
Did you find the intruder of the baby?
We did not find anyone.
Did you end your search for Charlie that night?
We kept looking and we spoke about Charlie publicly to try to find him, but we didn't.
Where is the baby now?
He's dead. I would like to get justice for whoever killed him.
That is all. Remember, the defense will offer our sincerest condolences.
We hope that you will feel relieved when the real killer is caught. Feel free to take a moment anytime you need to. Are you ready to begin? Okay, so Charlie had a cold, correct?
Yes, he did.
Why would you say in an unfinished house, especially when you had a baby in the house that had a cold?
I didn't feel like we were there on the weekend, and I didn't feel like Charlie was ready to take like a drive back to Englewood, so I wanted to keep him in the house.
March is known for being a cold month, right? And if the window wouldn't lock, cold air would likely drift in. Did you really think that would help Charlie get over his cold?
I do not recall.
Okay. Did Charlie have any known medical conditions, excluding the cold he'd recently developed?
He had rickets. We believed he did.
Your Honor, I would like to enter in evidence D1.
Is this something you want the jury to see?
Yes. Your Honor, may I approach the jury? This is a letter from Mrs. Lindbergh to Dr. Van Ingen about her baby.
Any objections by the prosecution as to this? Or will you stipulate to this document?
Grace. Just take a look at it.
Mrs. Lindbergh, have you ever seen that letter before?
I have.
Is Dr. Van Ingen your baby's primary physician?
Yes.
Why does Charlie put on a very specific diet?
Excuse me, can you ask again?
Why was Charlie put on a specific diet that was mentioned in your letter?
It was to help with his medical issues and with the rickets.
Did that particular doctor diagnose him with rickets?
Yes.
Did any other doctor diagnose him with anything excluding his cold?
No.
Did the public know that Charlie had rickets?
No.
Before the kidnapping, you went to take a walk, correct?
Yes.
Approximately how long was that walk?
About 15 to 20, 30 minutes.
And when you returned, you threw a pebble at the window to get Miss Gow's attention. She saw and in return, she held up Charlie. Is this all true?
Yes.
So you felt a need to make sure the baby was still there after only taking a half an hour at most walk?
Yes.
Will you please explain why you felt that way?
I wanted to see him up in his bedroom, and I thought he would be okay with Miss Gow. She was watching him all day after I left.
Okay. Did anybody outside of the household know that you were staying in the Hunterdon house?
Only the people who work for us, Mr. and Mrs. Wheatley, and Miss Betty Gow.
Okay, so to clarify, Mr. and Mrs. Wheatley, Miss Gow, and your husband all knew you would be in Hunterdon that Tuesday, correct? Did you personally tell anybody else?
No.
Okay, the next series of questions are going to be based on information that you know. Did Mr. and Mrs. Wheatley tell anybody else you would be staying at Hunterdon?
I wouldn't know.
Well, did they inform you that they had told anybody else, or do you just not know anything about that?
No.
Okay. So did you personally inform the defendant that you would be staying at the Hunterdon house?
No.
Did you ever meet Mr. Houtman before the trial?
No.
Do you or anybody else at your house have any known relationships with the defendant?
No.
Is it likely that any of your household staff alerted Mr. Houtman, a man that they most likely had never seen or met, that you would be in the Hunterdon house?
No.
Who knew of the east window not being able to lock?
Everyone who worked in the household, Mrs. and Mr. Wheatley and Miss Betty Gow.
Has the defendant ever come to your house and seen Charlie's nursery before? You said yourself that you have never previously met Mr. Houtman.
No, he is not.
Is there any possible way Mr. Houtman could have known about the window in Charlie's cold? It was a very peculiar situation, and only the household staff and your family knew you would be in the Hunterdon house, and Mr. Houtman is neither of those.
Could you repeat the question?
Is there a possible way that you know of that Mr. Houtman could have known that Charlie had a cold and his one window would not lock?
Not that I know of.
Is your husband a world-famous aviator?
Yes.
Is your child the son of an American hero?
Yes.
Is your family very wealthy?
Yes.
So, Mrs. Lindbergh, this is all true. You are married to an American hero. Your baby is the son of a celebrity. You are very wealthy, and your son's one window would not lock.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Lindbergh, I apologize if this sounds a bit blunt, but do you care about your son's well-being?
Yes.
Do you deeply care about the safety of your child?
Of course.
Is it typical for people who love their child and would do anything for their safety to allow them to sleep in a room with an unlocked window?
Not that I know of.
Do you feel comfortable having allowed Charles Lindbergh's son to sleep in a nursery that was not safe?
We thought it was at the time.
So you do not feel responsible in any way for the kidnapping, allowing a famous celebrity's son to sleep in a nursery with an unlocked window. You do not feel as if that was in any way your fault?
Objection. Stand up.
Go ahead, take a minute.
Leading.
It's not leading.
Somebody else object.
I would say either asked and answered or beyond the scope, so I'll sustain that objection.
Okay.
Need to find other questions to answer.
Were there any attempts in the past that you knew about to kidnap Charlie?
I do not recall.
How close was your room to Charlie's?
Down the hall.
Okay, so you said in your affidavit that your husband was that your room was upstairs, and you said you went upstairs to get ready for bed after your husband came home. Is this correct? Okay. And was your husband upstairs with you?
He came upstairs with me at around 10 o'clock, and then he went back down to the library.
Okay, so you said in your affidavit he was in the library. Is this correct? Okay. You sent Mrs. Wheatley to get you a glass of.
The following students to the office: Ryan Bickerstaff, Owen Buchanan, Isaiah Cosby, Hunter Smathers, Kendall Smathers, Bella Rostek.
Okay then. You sent Mrs. Wheatley to get you a glass of hot lemonade shortly before Miss Gow asked you about the baby. Where exactly was Mrs. Wheatley when Miss Gow determined the baby was missing?
She didn't get to return to give me the lemonade before Miss Gow came in.
Was she downstairs in the kitchen?
Yeah. Yes.
So Mrs. Wheatley was not present when you realized the baby was missing?
No.
And your husband wasn't present either?
He was in the library.
Your husband testified to hearing a noise shortly before the kidnapping occurred. Did you hear anything?
No, I did not.
Okay, so your husband, who was on the floor beneath you, heard a noise, while you, who was closer to the baby, did not hear a sound. Is this correct?
Yes.
Do you have a dog?
Yes.
Is your dog a Boston Terrier?
Yes.
Boston Terriers are prone to barking whenever they encounter a stranger. Wouldn't Mr. Houghton be considered?
Out of scope.
That's, I'll sustain that. But remember, it's got to be based on their direct question. So the mention of the dog, it's not relevant to the case.
Did your dog bark when the baby was kidnapped?
Objection to relevance.
Can't ask any more questions about the dog.
Okay. You said in your affidavit that you heard nothing around the time of the kidnapping, correct?
Yes.
Do you have any prior hearing problems?
No.
Does your husband have exceptional hearing?
Not that I know.
Relevant.
Or beyond the scope.
Okay.
Sustain.
So, to clarify, you're not hearing a noise. Only your husband, who is further away from the baby's room, claims to have heard.
Objection, that's an answer.
Sustain.
Come on.
Did a good job. Any redirect?
Bacon Hampton,
You may step down. You guys are trying to get the hang of it, right? If you think about your objections, use it.
We're going to pause for just a minute.
All right, is prosecution ready with your next witness?
The prosecution called Bessie Gow to the witness stand.
Ms. Gale, you may approach. And Ms. Gale, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, within the rules of the mock trial?
I do.
You may be seated. Remember to speak clearly. No head nods. A yes or no. You may proceed when you're ready.
What is your name and where are you from?
My name is Bessie Noyak now, and I am from Scotland.
What was your occupation when you worked for the Lindberghs?
I am the nursemaid or nanny, so I took care of the baby.
When did you start working for the family?
I started working for the Lindberghs on February 25th, 1931.
How old was the boy when you were first employed?
I believe he was 8 months old.
Where did you reside while working for the family?
I stayed at Englewood, the Morrow's home.
Who are the Morrows?
The Morrows are Mrs. Lindbergh's family, so they're Mr. and Mrs. Morrow are Charlie's grandparents.
Where would the Lindbergh family travel every weekend?
They would travel to Hopewell.
Would you travel with them?
No, I would still stay at the Englewood residence.
Please tell us about the day of March 1st.
On March 1st, I got a call at around 10:30 to travel to Hopewell because the baby was sick and Mr. and Mrs. Lindbergh did not want him to travel. I arrived around 2 p.m.
What did you do after arriving?
I resumed my duties for the baby, and he ran into, at around 5:45, he ran into the kitchen and spoke to Elsie Wheatley.
Who was Elsie Wheatley?
Elsie Wheatley is a household servant, and so is her husband Oliver.
After he spoke to Mrs. Wheatley, where did you go with Charlie?
I took him upstairs to nursery for supper. Mrs. Lindbergh entered.
So Mrs. Lindbergh then entered the nursery?
Yes.
What happened when the baby was ready for bed?
We undressed him, and because he was sick, I decided to give him some medicine, but he spilled some on his necklace, so I made him a little shirt, and when he was ready, I put him in his crib.
What did you do to prepare the actual nursery for his bedtime?
We pinned his bedclothes, his blanket and upper bedclothes to the mattress, and shut all the windows except the southeast window.
Why did you not close the southeast window?
It could not quite close, it had evidently warped.
So did you close it the best you could?
Yes.
Did you leave the baby at about 7:30?
Yes.
What did you do after leaving the nursery?
We,
Relax, take your time.
I don't think the mic is on.
It's on.
Where was it? Sorry. Would it be correct that after leaving the nursery, you had supper with the Wheatleys?
yes.
And at about 8:30, did you hear Colonel Lindbergh's car arrive?
Yes.
Did you talk to Colonel Lindbergh?
He briefly walked through the dining room, and we spoke about about the baby's condition.
Did you remain in the dining room for about 20 minutes to a half hour?
Yes.
Who was in your sight the whole time?
Mr. and Mrs. Wheatley.
After you were in the dining room, where did you enter?
I entered the sitting room, and the dog was with me.
Did you go back upstairs at about 9 o'clock?
Yes.
What did you do when you were upstairs? When you went back upstairs, did Elsie Wheatley and you go to her room?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, that's leading.
I'll sustain that.
When did you next check on the baby?
Around 10.
Did you discover anything odd after entering the child's room?
I could not hear him breathe, so I checked his crib, and he was not there.
Did you ask Mr. Lindbergh if he had the boy?
I entered the library and asked him, and
And did you also ask Mrs. Lindbergh?
yes,
And they both had no idea where the son was, correct?
yes.
What did Colonel Lindbergh do after realizing his son was missing?
He ran into the room and got a rifle out of his closet.
Did you enter the boy's room?
Yes.
And did Colonel Lindbergh say anything?
He told Anne that somebody had stolen their babies.
What happened when the police arrived?
And Mrs. Wheatley and I were in the sitting room, and I was called to the nursery.
Did you see anything in the nursery?
I saw the police examining a ransom note and a dirty brown smudge on bed sheets.
What occurred 11 days after the kidnapping?
I was called to a morgue in Trenton and to identify a body.
Could you identify the body?
It was the body of Charlie Jr.
Was he the same size as when he was taken?
Yes.
After that, did you see anything else pertaining to the case?
One day, when Elsie and I were on a walk, we found Charlie's thumb guard in the driveway.
What's a thumb guard?
It's to keep children from sucking on their thumb.
And are you positive it was Charles Lindbergh Jr., slum guard?
Yes.
Now, how has the murder of Charlie impacted you?
I was very traumatized. I had to quit my job and move back to Scotland.
So,
Go ahead.
Can you please repeat, how has the murder of Charlie impacted you?
I was very traumatized. I had to quit my job and move back to Scotland.
What do you want for the family?
I want justice for the poor boy and his family.
Who do you believe kidnapped and murdered Charles Lindbergh Jr.?
I believe Richard Bruno Hapman.
Objection, Your Honor. That's speculation.
Sustained.
No further questioning.
Cross-examination.
Miss Betsy, you were called on rather short notice to come to the Hopewell estate, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you have to cancel any plans?
I had to cancel a date with
Okay. Were you angry about having to come on such short notice?
no.
During, what is your job exactly? What are the guidelines?
I take care of the baby. I feed him, put him to bed, watch him.
Okay. Around what time did Charlie Jr. go to bed?
Around 7.
Okay. And is it correct that you stayed at the Englewood Estate and was not Hopewell?
Yes.
You ate dinner with Mr. and Mrs. Wheatley, is that correct?
Yes.
After dinner, were you with them or did you go somewhere else?
I went into the sitting room.
Who were you with?
The dog.
The dog. Did the dog hear any noises? Did you hear any noises?
No.
What time did you go back to the nursery to find Charlie Jr. missing?
About 10.
How close were you to the nursery before that?
I was in Elsie's room.
Okay, how far away is that from the baby's nursery?
Down the hall.
Okay. What was your first reaction when you could not find?
I thought his parents might have him, so I asked Mrs. and Mr. Lindbergh.
Okay, did they know where the baby was?
No.
What did they do after you talked to them?
They ran into their room and Mr. Lindbergh got a rifle out of his closet.
To you, did that make logical sense? For him to grab a gun?
No.
Okay. Did you check any other rooms besides the nursery for the baby?
Yes.
Is it true that a baby could crawl out of the crib?
No.
Okay. Just to restate, Charles Lindbergh did grab a gun.
Yes.
Okay, that's all.
More redirect.
Yes, Your Honor.
Would it be correct that Charles Lindbergh Jr. grabbed a gun to inspect the premise and search for the child?
Yes.
So does it make logical sense that he had a gun to protect his child if anyone had taken him?
Objection, Your Honor. That's needed.
Sustained.
And you took almost full-time care for the child except for when he was at the Hopewell residence, correct?
Yes.
So you love and care for the child very deeply. And do you believe his parents or you would ever do anything to harm him?
No.
No further questioning.
Any recalls?
Any calls? Any?
You step down. Good job. Prosecution, may call your next witness.
Prosecution calls Dr. John Condon for the witness stand.
Dr. Khan, you may approach. Dr. Khan, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth within the rules of the mock trial? Okay, you may be seated.
Speak in the microphone.
You speak clearly.
What is your name, and please tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm John Connon. I'm 74 years old.
Where are you from and what does your education include?
I'm from the Bronx, New York. I am highly educated. I went to New York University. I have my doctorate of education.
Are you currently employed?
Previously, I taught in New York schools for 46 years. I was a principal. I have since retired.
At the time of the Lindbergh baby kidnapping, what was your job?
I was a principal.
How did you become involved in the Lindbergh baby kidnapping?
I am an extremely religious and patriotic man, and both of these things compelled me to send a letter to Mr. Lindbergh.
Please explain to us what your letter included.
My letter included me offering $1,000 of my own money to be added to the ransom note.
Did you write this letter just because you wanted the child to be returned to his loving family?
Yes.
What happened after you wrote your letter?
On March 8th, it appeared in our local newspaper.
What occurred the next day?
I received a note from the kidnappers.
What did that letter say?
It stated that if I wanted to go as a go-between, I had to. I had to put 3 words in the newspaper when the ransom money was ready. Money is ready.
Was there anything special about the letter?
There was a signature and 3 holes on the paper. The signature was 2 interlocking circles. One was tinted red and one was tinted purple.
Was this the kidnapper's signature?
Yes.
Your Honor, do I have permission to enter Article P1 into evidence?
You do.
Do I have permission to show it to the jury?
Yes, you do.
Is the signature on that ransom note what you're referring to that was on all the authentic ransom letters?
Yes.
After reading the letter, what did you do?
I went to the Hopewell residence to talk to Mr. Lindbergh.
At the Hopewell residence with the Lindbergh family, where did you sleep that night?
I slept in the only unoccupied room, which was the baby's nursery.
Did you observe anything while in the baby's room?
The next morning, I studied the crib and mattress. At the top of the blankets, just beneath the pillow, there were 2 large safety pins.
And what did these safety pins do?
They held the baby securely to the bed.
What did you do with them?
I took them and I placed them in a pouch in my pocket.
Did you notice anything else in the nursery?
After that, I walked to the east window about 3/4 of the way towards the top of the sash frame. There was a print of a hand.
Tell us about your meeting with Mr. Lindbergh.
Colonel Lindbergh and I had a conversation where he explained he would give me 50,000 ransom and the extra 20,000 as soon as he could, and he decided that we should come up with the name.
So the original ransom price was $50,000, and the kidnapper added $20,000, so that the ransom would in total be $70,000.
Yes.
And what was the secret name you used to communicate with the kidnapper in the newspaper?
Chapsy.
What happened the next day?
The requested ad appeared, money is ready, Chapsy.
What happened later that night?
A man with a strong German accent called with strict instruction to stay in each night. He also said he would stay in touch.
When did you next hear word from the kidnapper?
At 8:30 p.m. 3 days later, a taxi cab driver came to my door and gave me a letter, and his name was Joseph Perron.
What did the letter say?
It gave me instructions to Woodlawn Cemetery.
Who did you meet with at Woodlawn Cemetery?
A man who I strongly believe is Bruno Richard Allen.
Please explain your meeting with the man.
He stood behind the cemetery gate. He wore a dark overcoat, a felt hat, and carried a handkerchief.
Did you see his face?
I saw his face directly in the streetlight.
Could you describe his features?
He had high cheekbones, almost almond-shaped eyes, a small mouth, straight nose, large ears. His eyebrows were heavy and on a straight line, a thin neck, stooping shoulders, a clean-shaven face, and a light complexion.
Is this man in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Please point to him.
His name is Bruno Richard Hellman.
Did you have a conversation?
I said, "I see you." He asked, "Did you get my note?" I replied, "Yes, I got it." Also, I paid careful attention to every word he said and his pronunciation of everything, so I could easily recognize his voice.
And did he have a German accent?
Yes,
Do you know where Bruno Richard Hauptmann is from?
Germany.
What did he say next?
The kidnapper said, "You got my letter with the signature. It is the same like the letter with the signature which was left in the baby's crib."
Then what did you show him?
I removed the pins from my pouch that I took from Charlie's nursery. I showed them to him.
What did he reply?
His response was, "Yes, those pins fasten the blankets to the mattress in the baby's crib, near the top, near the pillow. That is right," I agreed and returned them to my pocket.
Because Hauptmann could identify the pins, what can you conclude?
He must have been in the nursery to be able
Yes,
to.
Your Honor, that's leading.
It's not leading, I'm gonna say it's speculation, but I'll sustain your objection.
What did you ask next?
His name. He replied, "John," and then I asked, "Where's the baby?"
And what was his response?
He said, "Tell Colonel Lindbergh the baby's on the boat."
A boat?
Because of his accent, it sounded like he was saying boat. He meant boat.
How did you try to gain the kidnapper's trust?
I told the man to transfer the baby to any priest. I said the priest would keep his real name a secret and would not report him to the police. That way the priest can make sure the baby will be returned safely to his parents.
What was his response?
He said, "No, the kidnapping has already been planned for over a year."
Did he mention anything else?
He said, "I will send by 10 o'clock Monday morning a token."
What is the token he was referring to?
A sleeping suit from the baby.
When did you receive the sleeping suit?
3 days after our meeting.
Your Honor, do I have permission to enter P5 into evidence? Do I have permission to show the jury?
Yes, you do.
Are you certain this was Charlie Lindbergh's sleeping suit?
Yes, Mr. Lindbergh identified it as his son's.
Was anything else included in the package with the sleeping suit?
Yes, a note.
What did the note read?
It said the ransom would be paid before we could see the baby due to their safety. If we agreed with these conditions, we would be put in the paper. I accept, money is ready. Colonel Lindbergh questioned this statement. Circumstance will not allow us to make the transfer like you wish.
What does this suggest to you?
Bruno Richard Hauptmann was the man who wrote the letter. He was also the man I met at the cemetery. I knew.
Speculation.
Sustain.
Now what occurred next in the progression of the case?
The next day, Colonel Breckenridge delivered the ransom money to me. I put it in the bank and the serial numbers were directly reported.
Then what happened?
I met with the kidnapper again at St. Raymond Cemetery.
Is it the same man you met 21 days before?
Yes.
Who did you meet with at the cemetery?
The kidnapper, who certainly is Bruno Richard Hauptmann.
What did he wear?
He wore no disguise, nothing over his face. He wore a fedora hat, his brim snapped down in front. His suit seemed to be a dark material. He did not, as he had early moments in our first meeting, hide his face between the lapels of his coat.
Did you see his face again?
From seeing his features again, I know positively that is the same man I met 21 days before.
The man that is Bruno Richard Hauptmann.
Objection. Speculation.
Gotta overrule.
So, did you have a conversation with Bruno Richard Hauptmann?
He asked if I had the money with me. I responded, "No, it's up in the car."
And what was his response? You told him you did not have the money at the time?
He told me to go get the money, and I asked where the baby was. He said he would not be able to get the baby. We would not be able to get the baby for another 6 to 8 hours.
How did you respond?
I told him I needed a receipt explaining where I would find the baby. He agreed, and I left for the car as he left to write a receipt.
Did you say anything else to the kidnapper before he left to go get the receipt?
I convinced him to just accept $50,000 ransom so I could save Mr. Lindbergh $20,000. Then I went to the car to get the ransom money, and the kidnapper left to write a receipt. We both left at 9:16 p.m.
When did you return?
I returned earlier than him and he came back at 9:29. It took him 13 minutes overall to write the receipt and come back.
What happened when he returned?
He put the note in my right hand as I gave him the ransom with my left.
What did the note or the receipt he gave you say?
I opened it. Once I returned to the car with Mr. Lindbergh, it said that the boy was on the Nellie boat and where to find the boat. The boat was between Gayhead and Monument Beach.
What did you do after opening the note?
We went to Manhattan for a meeting with government officials.
What did the officials do?
The officials informed Washington about our note on where to find the baby.
Did you talk to any of the officials directly?
Chief Irie asked me questions about the kidnapper, his height, build, features, voice, accent, and how he dressed.
Did you explain his features?
I explained his features.
And he drew a picture of the man you saw at the cemeteries?
Yes.
When did you leave to get the baby?
At 2 a.m. we flew to where the note instructed us to go, from Gayhead to Monument Beach.
How many times did you fly around to make sure you checked and saw that the boy was not there and the Nellie was not there?
At least a dozen times.
What did you find?
Nothing. No boat matched the description of the Nellie where we were told the baby was being held.
Was the baby ever found?
No, not alive. He was found dead, and I remember sadly hearing the shocking news.
Who do you believe killed Charles Lindbergh Jr.?
Objection, Your Honor, that's speculation.
Sustained.
And who was the man you met with at the cemeteries who delivered the ransom money to?
A man who I believe is Bernard Richard Hauptman.
No further questioning.
On receipt for that.
Good morning, Dr. Condon. I would like to start off with making sure I have some information correct. You're currently 74 years old, right?
Yes.
You used to be a professor, a school teacher, and a principal, but retired about a year ago.
Yes.
You offered $1,000 to add onto the $50,000 ransom, correct?
Yes.
In the end, the kidnappers declined your extra money.
I do not recall.
You were acting as a go-between for Lindbergh and the kidnappers.
Yes.
You were communicating with the kidnappers but publishing brief and straight to the point ads in the newspaper.
Yes.
You lived in the Bronx, New York.
Yes.
Most of the letters, the back of your affidavit, are to you from the kidnappers.
Yes.
Okay. Now, on page 2, you say, immediately after reading the letter, I went to search for my friend Al Wright. The trolley took me to Max Rosenhaim's restaurant to find Wright. I looked for Al's auto outside, but didn't see it. Max Rosenhaim was inside, so I told him about the letter. He offered his friend Milton Gallo's car to drive me and requested to come with. On page 7, you say, John told you. He told me there were 6 members of the kidnapping gang. Number 1 was the boss, and he told me a smart man. Number 2, he said, knows you well. He says we can trust you. Then, why doesn't number 2 come to see me? I asked, is he afraid? He might pop from you. In your testimony, you said the second man and 6 kidnappers knew you well, but was that too scared to be caught, but he didn't want to confront you, is that correct?
Yes.
Slow down your speech just a little bit. That's all right.
Now tell me, is it true that Max Rosenhaim offered his friend's car to do your service?
Yes.
Don't you think it's a little odd that he would offer his friend's car and not ask him first?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Is it also true that Rosenhaim requested to come with and had no means of being involved in the situation?
I do not recall.
Why would he want to just go for no reason? Do you think it's because he is one of those members needing a diversion?
Speculation. Sustained.
On page 5, you say, at 7:30 p.m., Max Rosenhaim and Milton Gallo stopped in to hear if anything was new with the case. Is it possible that they were acting as a spy for the gang with the 6 trans
Speculation. Sustained. Before we go on, can you guys let me know who is testifying as an expert? Is he testifying as an expert? Okay. Unfortunately, just being a doctor doesn't make you an expert in everything. Okay, so going forward for both sides, just let me know who an expert is so that I have a better idea of who's testifying, who is able to give their opinion.
Again, on page 7, you say, John told me he was a sailor and was from further up than Boston. I asked, are you German? He replied, no, I'm Scandinavian. His mouth was sharp, his mouth was small, his eyes deep-seated, above high cheekbones, his complexion was light. This is just a small piece you can claim to remember about Cemetery John. You go on for about 4 pages reciting these exact words. and 2.5 pages the second time you met. Now tell me, you were at the cemetery for about an hour and a half, or hour and 15 minutes.
Yes.
You explained Secretary John's exact words and stated that the man's features very clearly.
Now.
You were 74 years old, and most people your age would not be able to do so. Do you think that it's possible you didn't remember everything or could have mixed up some of his words?
Yes.
Is it also true that Secretary John had a strong German accent?
Yes.
It's hard to understand English versus German, so do you think it's also possible you could have misheard what he said?
Yes.
You described his complexion very clearly, describing high cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes, straight nose, large ears, high eyebrows, straight line, a thin neck, stooped shoulders, a clean-shaven face. Do you think you focused so much on his details that you also could have not remembered everything he said?
Yes.
Dr. Conan, the human eyes don't see very well in the dark. It takes about a minute or so for eyesight to adjust in darkness from straight light. When you first met John at the cemetery, it was dark.
No.
The second time you were with him, it was on a street with street light, correct?
Yes.
The street light shouldn't have been enough for you to see the color of his eyes unless you were directly under it, or the tone of his skin. Is it possible you could have thought you saw the colors of his features and the shape of his face from the dark?
Yes.
In your affidavit, you try to persuade John to either see the baby or have him bring the child to any Catholic priest for protection. You also plead this in letters sent between you and the kidnappers. Do you think it's possible the reason they said no each time was because they knew the baby was there?
Yes.
Do you think maybe they played you knowing that you would never give the money to them or Lindbergh if you knew the baby was there?
Yes.
Dr. Condon, you stated on page 13 of your affidavit, you must take me to the baby. I explained. I have told you before, it's impossible. It cannot be done. My father wouldn't let me. I asked, is your father in it too? He responded, yes. Now give me the money. Now on page 15 of your affidavit, you end by saying Colonel Richard Houtman, the defendant, was the man I saw at the two cemeteries and the man who identified himself as John. Is it possible that Herr Houtman was John when he was an illegal immigrant sailing on a boat here by himself without any family following at any time during or after he's raised into America?
Yes.
If Houtman was Cemetery John, he would not be taking orders from a father. He's a grown man. Someone younger, possibly an older teenager, might follow under the rule of their father. Do you think that? No.
You don't understand the question. You can have it repeated.
Can you repeat that?
Slow down, Ken, slow down.
If Houtman was Cemetery John, he would not be taking orders from his father.
Objection, speculation.
Sustain.
You were a school teacher, a professor, and a principal. You should understand behavioral actions of many different age groups. Why would you suspect a grown man to be childless and such
Objection, speculation.
Sustain.
Do you think the person met knew your name was John Condon, using your first name to throw you off?
Yes.
Condon, why the police didn't, okay, I'll phrase this, hold on.
Sure.
Dr. Condon, do you understand why the police didn't notice the handprint on the baby's window?
No.
Yeah, I'm very cool.
Read the records.
So your friends Alrich, Milangalo, and Max Rosenhan all helped you during this case.
Yes.
And do you believe that they were just helping you because they cared about the well-being of the child as well?
Speculation.
So if Max Rosenhan offered his friend Owen Gallo's car to drive you to Hopewell, it was just because he was your friend?
Yes.
It had nothing to do with the baby. You just wanted the well-being of the child to be okay.
Objection. Pleading.
Sustained.
And although Bruno Richard Hellman or Cemetery John said that he worked with a gang, would that matter because he's still part of the gang?
Objection. Speculation.
I'll sustain that.
So if Cemetery John told you that there was more than one person involved in the case, would that matter for the verdict because that person is still part of the gang? They were still guilty.
Objection. Speculation.
Yeah, I agree. I'll sustain that.
So you are 74 years old,
Yes.
but you worked as a principal and you're a doctor.
Yes.
So you're used to being an authority?
Yes.
And you're used to disciplining kids and listening to their concerns about the school?
Yes.
So would you say you have good hearing?
Yes.
And you stated that you paid careful attention to all of the details of Cemetery John's face and all the words he said, correct?
Yes.
So, and you also saw his face in the streetlight and you met with him twice.
Yes.
So you could recognize his features and his voice very easily.
Yes.
And no further questioning.
Any requests? You may step in. Prosecution can call their next witness.
The prosecution called Joseph Brown to the witness stand.
And I would like Nathan and Lindsay to switch places. Quickly. Nathan and Lindsay, switch places. Quickly, move. And you're really talking to the microphone.
All right, and Mr. Purim, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth within the rules of the mock trial. Okay, you may be seated. Make sure you speak up and clearly.
Can you please state your name and your job?
I am Joseph Perona and I work as a taxi driver in Bronx, New York.
Where was your residence during the time of the kidnapping?
I also lived in Bronx, New York during the investigation.
Did anything unusual or unordinary happen to you during the time of the investigation?
On March 12th, I received the 5th ransom note from a certain individual.
Just get closer to the mic.
He flagged me down near a Majestic Hotel and paid me a fare to deliver a letter. No one asked Conan to meet him in a specific location at a certain time after he receives his letter from him.
What were your actions upon receiving this letter?
I drove to Conan's house to deliver the letter. A few days later, I was asked to come to a police station to identify the man I found.
Can you describe the individual from whom you received the letter?
He wore a brown top coat and a brown felt hat and then verbally asked me to deliver the letter to Conan.
Is the man you saw in this courtroom today?
Yes.
Can I ask you to identify this man?
Yes.
Would not tell me what he's wearing? Would not tell me what he's wearing? So he's identified for the record.
What's he wearing today?
What's he wearing? Describe it for me. I know who he is, but describe it.
Yes.
Wearing a blue shirt, brown pants. Identified for it.
Well, please note for the court records that Mr. Perone has identified the defendant, Bruno Hauptmann, in court today as the man who paid him to deliver a ransom note to Charles Lindbergh.
So
No further questions.
Cross examine. Okay, you may step down. Prosecution can call your next witness.
Prosecution calls Daniel Schwarzkopf to the stand.
All right, and Colonel Schwarzkopf, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
So we want. All right, you may
Move it up, yes.
Please state your name and occupation.
My name is Colonel Norman J. Schwarzkopf, and I am the Superintendent of the New Jersey State Police Force.
What qualified you to take over the Lindbergh kidnapping investigation?
I have been the superintendent of the recently formed New Jersey State Police Force for 14 years.
What did you do when you got called to the Lindbergh estate about the suspected kidnapping?
On March 1st, we were called to the Lindbergh estate on the suspected kidnapping of Charles August Lindbergh Jr. I had set up a police force in their garage.
What did you first suspect to be, who did you first suspect to be the kidnapper?
I had first...
Speculation.
I'm going to overrule that. As a law enforcement official, they can draw their conclusions.
I had first suspected that the kidnappers were non-professional based on their apparent familiarity of the Lindbergh estate and the modest request of $50,000. Later on, I suspected it was to be by gang involvement, as in this Great Depression, kidnapping is a common criminal enterprise.
Tell me what you wanted to do the night of the ransom drop.
I wanted to set up a drop at the ransom location, or trap at the ransom location, but Dr. John Condon, the private citizen negotiator, had insisted that no law enforcement was to be at the site.
What did the kidnapper's note at the ransom drop entail?
It had described the location in which the baby was to be found, but sadly the baby was not found in the location.
How and when did you find the baby?
About a month later, after the note, a truck driver notified us that he found a skeletonized corpse. The corpse proved to be Charles August Lindbergh Jr.
How did the baby die?
My police force had told me that based on the level of decomposition, that he had died after abduction. The cause of death seems to be by blunt force trauma.
How did you test the theory about how Charles was abducted?
I had a duplicate ladder constructed, and I had carried a sandbag the same weight as Charles Jr. up the ladder and reenacted the crime myself.
What were the results of this experiment?
Once I'd reached the highest rung of the lower portion of the ladder, the side rail split exactly where it had on the real ladder, and I dropped the sandbag. It had hit the Lindbergh's house's library cement windowsill, echoing the massive skull fracture that served as Charles Lindbergh Jr.'s cause of death.
What did the psychiatrist Dudley D. Schoenfeld say about Hauptmann?
He had concluded that Hauptmann was a mechanically inclined 40-year-old German with dementia caused by the feelings of powerlessness.
Tell me about how you found Mr. Richard Bruno Hauptmann.
Bills that had turned up in circulation had led to my September 19th, 1934 arrest of Richard Bruno Hauptmann. The money had been spent on gasoline, and when asked, a gas station attendant, Hauptmann admitted to possess about 100 more just like it.
What was found in Hauptmann's home?
Inside of Hauptmann's home, we found some of the ransom money and a handgun.
What other behaviors made Hauptmann suspicious?
After the ransom money was delivered, Hauptmann had quit his job and left where he was living previously, and he did not have a credible alibi on the night that the ransom money was delivered, nor on the night in which the kidnapping occurred.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You are the superintendent of the police force of New Jersey, is that correct?
Yes.
As a superintendent, are you required to study anatomy and biology?
I do not recall.
Did you study subjects like forensics, criminal justice, and law enforcement?
I do not recall.
If you're a superintendent of the police force, those are all things you're going to study.
Yes.
Think about the question. Remember I told you in the beginning, take a pause, think about the question. If you truly don't know, you don't know. Okay.
Is it true that you reenacted the scene?
Yes.
And what did you use to represent Charles Lindbergh Jr.?
A sandbag weighing the same amount as him.
Did you think that a sandbag accurately represented a human baby?
Yes.
You didn't think to use... Did you think to use a baby doll or crash dummy?
I do not recall.
Was the sandbag the most?
Nicholas Gualtieri, please report to the office.
Were you rushing to get the reenactment done?
I do not recall.
Did you have access to other items other than?
The following students to the office: Michael Angstadt, Nathaniel Solonic, Aubrey Detweiler, Rory Bailey, Aiden Sterner, Riley Gaston.
Ask the question again.
Did you not have access to other items other than the sandbag?
I do not recall.
Some fun with it. Any, want to pick it up yet?
Redirect?
Just to be clear, the sandbag did weigh the same amount as Charles Lindbergh Jr., correct?
Yes.
So you did think the sandbag would represent Charles Lindbergh Jr., correct?
Yes.
No further questions.
Let's take a redirect. Let's take a recess. 7th grade. Jury members may take a recess and be back in about 5 minutes.
Prosecution ready to proceed with your next witness?
Prosecution would like to call John Tyrell to the stand.
Tyrell, you may approach the stand. And Mr. Tyrell, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth within the rules of the mock trial?
I do.
Okay. Are you testifying as an expert today? Yes.
Mr. Tyrell, will you please state your name and occupation to the jury?
My name is John Terrell, and I've been classified as a document examiner.
May I ask what school you attended?
None, unfortunately. There were no colleges that provided the classes that suited this occupation. Therefore, I was forced to teach everything I know.
But you still consider yourself qualified for cases like this?
I'm highly qualified and well respected in my occupation.
Okay. And what exactly does a document examiner do on the average workday?
Well, it's not exactly an everyday job. I get called on cases to look over writings so that detectives can obtain clues and may lead them to the solution of a case.
And can you please tell us what sort of cases you've been involved in before?
I've worked on a variety of cases, including the Molinax case, the Leighton Rice Patrick case, and the Dr. Kennedy homicide.
And these are all important, correct?
Yes.
Well then, Mr. Tyrell, I understand that you've been asked by the police to take some time to look over the ransom notes from who we have been led to believe is Richard Topman.
I have.
So what can you tell us about your findings?
Well, in both writing samples, I found that the subject's handwriting showed that the Y is first made a V, and then the stroke is added to complete the letter.
But you found more that could lead us to believe that these writings were in fact by Richard Topman, correct?
Yes, I was also able to find that the T in the words of these notes were uncrossed, a common trait amongst most German writings. That is probably induced by the fact that the German T is made with a cross, is not made with a cross as we make it, but by a little turn at the bottom near the baseline, a very expressive and legible letter as they make it. But this writer makes a turn at the bottom of the T, a turn of the pen, for the stroke of the next letter, and does not cross the T. As Evans makes it very clear that the ransom notes belong to a German, as in Richard Hauptmann.
No further questions.
So you examined the ransom notes?
I did.
How long have you been in this field?
I do not recall.
How did you learn your trade?
By reading books and through life lessons.
Then nobody taught you to properly examine documents? You only had your, at the time, inexperienced self as a teacher?
Yes.
What cases have you testified in?
The Molinax case, Leighton Rice Patrick case, and the Kennedy homicide cases, which are very
which are like well-known cases.
Were you successful in any of them?
Yes.
What exactly have you learned from these cases?
It showed me different ways that people write and how they express themselves through writing.
Have your theories been correct in your past cases about the handwriting?
I believe so, yes.
Did you have a writing sample for Mr. Halvin?
That one that I looked over, yes.
Okay, so are you sure? Not once did your affidavit clearly mention a writing sample for Mr. Halvin. Your affidavit only mentioned what you wrote as quote-unquote the subject's handwriting. Were you referring to Mr. Halvin there?
Yes.
Okay. Is writing a V and then adding a stroke to it to make a Y extremely uncommon?
No.
You said in your affidavit that there are some variations to the Y. Will you please tell the jury what you mean by this?
Do not recall.
Okay. So are you completely sure that the ransom notes exactly match Mr. Halvin's writing sample?
Not exactly per se, but it has very common traits between both writing samples.
Okay. Well, if there are variations, wouldn't it be reasonable to assume that somebody else could have written these notes if they used a different variation than Mr. Halvin?
Can you please restate that?
Okay. If there are variations of the Y, wouldn't it be reasonable to assume that somebody else could have written the notes if they used a different variation than the defendant?
Don't recall.
It's a yes or no question. So it's not reasonable to assume that somebody else could have used a different...
I'm going to say yes.
What did you notice?
Absolutely.
Okay. Continuing on then, what did you notice about the T's in the notes?
Well, the T's were uncrossed, which for German writing it is usually uncrossed, but with the stroke added at the bottom of the letter. And considering that Bruno Halvin is German, he could have done that.
So Mr. Halvin would possibly fit this description.
Yes.
So has that led you to conclude that Mr. Halvin wrote the ransom notes?
Yes.
Is Mr. Halvin the only German living in the United States?
No.
Do other immigrants from Germany live in the United States?
Yes.
And you said in your affidavit that you've seen many German writers neglect to cross their T's, correct?
Yes.
So of all the many German writers in the United States, you stated that it is very clear that the ransom notes belong to Bruno Halvin. If this is a trait not unusual among Germans, then why does it appear so obvious to you that Mr. Halvin wrote the ransom notes?
Well, in both the ransom notes, the T was made in a way that, with the stroke, that they almost identically matched.
Is it possible that another German could have written these notes if this trait is not uncommon, as you said in your affidavit?
Yes.
Okay. What did you conclude again from your examination? That Mr. Halvin wrote the notes, correct?
Yes.
What evidence do you have to back up your claim?
Can you restate the question?
What evidence do you have to back up your claim that Mr. Halvin wrote these notes?
Through my writing sample. Through the samples that I took from the ransom note and personal writings that Bruno Halvin had written prior.
So may I summarize up what you have provided for the jury? That you based your examination in your affidavit on the T's and the Y's. The Y's have a different variation. There are different variations to write the Y's that Mr. Halvin wrote. And the T's were not crossed, which is not uncommon in German writers. Is this all correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Halvin's writing style could just easily be similar to that of another German immigrant based on what you just said right now. Is this true?
Possibly.
Okay, so to revisit your affidavit, do you still believe 100% that Mr. Halvin wrote the ransom note after everything you just said?
Yes.
Or is it possible that Mr. Halvin did not write it?
I'm sure he wrote it.
So you can state with absolute confidence that the defendant wrote the ransom note?
Objection, asked and answered.
Yes.
Sustained.
So even though there is different variations of the ladders and that other German writers have done similar traits, you are...
Objection? Is this still asked and answered?
If it's going in the same, if you're looking for the same answer, then yeah.
Okay, Your Honor, that is all.
You've made your point very well. Any redirect? Prosecution called our next witness.
Prosecution called Arthur Kohler to the witness stand.
Are you an expert? You are an expert. Arthur Kohler, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing, and nothing but the truth within the rules of the mock trial?
I do.
Can you please state your name and a little about yourself?
My name is Arthur Kohler, and I currently live in Madison, Wisconsin with my wife and son.
Can you please state your qualifications to give this expert testimony?
I'm a wood examination expert and have worked with the government in the United States Forest Products Laboratory for a total of 21 years and am currently a department leader. I have graduated for a Master of Science from the University of Wisconsin and have testified in a case as an expert witness in a case before. One of my most famous cases being John Magnuson versus the state of Wisconsin.
How did you first come to be involved in the Lindbergh case?
Shortly after hearing about the case, I became very interested in the ladder that I had found at the scene and believed it may hold some clues to who its owner was. I then wrote a letter to Mr. Lindbergh asking if I could possibly be of assistance. I received no response.
When did you first encounter the kidnapping ladder?
I first encountered the kidnapping ladder about a year after the kidnapping itself took place.
What was your first impression of the ladder?
I could tell right away that the ladder had not been made by a good carpenter. It was a telescoping ladder, meaning that it could be compressed or expanded as needed. The three sections of the ladder were extremely narrow, which I believe may have been for transport purposes.
Your Honor, do we have permission to present exhibits P2 and P3?
Yes.
That's what? I have to look at
Can you just ask piecemeally at? Yeah. Okay. Is this a section of the ladder you examined?
Yes.
Okay. With this, could you provide more details on the ladder structure?
Yes. The ladder was 14 inches wide at the bottom and 11 on the top. And each of the three sections of the ladder was 6 feet and 8.5 inches long. One of the rungs of the ladder was made of low-quality wood, causing it to split. The ladder rungs were 21 inches apart when they would normally be 10 to 14 inches apart. I believe the maker must have wanted fewer steps to navigate.
Was there anything else that stood out to you during your examination?
I was able to identify some of the types of wood used in ladders, such as that rails 12 and 13 were made of North Carolina pine. Rail 16 had 4 holes made by square cut nails that were popular for use during the early 19th century, but now are only occasionally used in home construction. There was no rust discoloring the nail holes, so I believed it must have been used indoors. Rails 12 and 13 looked promising. I believe they could be tracked.
So were you able to track them?
Yes.
By what means did you trace these rails?
The first thing I did was go to the Lindbergh residence and some of the surrounding lumber places and check for wood samples that would possibly match the wood markings
Yeah. If you were unable to find a match, how did your search continue?
I sent letters to wood dressing companies all over the country looking for those that used the same types of wood and had the same wood dressing machines that would make the same markings. Over quite a bit of time, many companies sent me samples, but none of these seemed promising until I received a very promising sample from the MJ and JJ Thorn Lumber Company.
Please explain how the measurements of this sample matched up with the rails.
The samples I received had very nearly identical planer markings to rails 12 and 13. Planers are devices used to shape down wood pieces to make them smooth.
Your Honor, do we have permission to present Exhibit P4?
Yeah.
Which is the chart.
A1.
May Arthur Kohler approach the evidence?
Yes.
Is this the chart you prepared to compare wood samples?
Yes.
Can you please explain with your chart?
The chart shows the comparison of the sample that was sent to me by the J.J. Thorne Mountain Company and bills 12 and 13. As you can see here, many of them were the same and had little difference. And the ones that did have difference, the differences were due to the knives, or could possibly be due to the knives being sharpened or dulled over time.
What did you do when you discovered these similarities?
I visited the Dord Lumber Company, and the owners let me put a piece of North Carolina pine into each of the three machines that could possibly match. The first two did not quite fit the description, but the third did. There were admittedly some grooves and indentations missing from the wood, but these would have changed slightly when they sharpened the knives.
What did you do after locating your machine?
I then asked them for records of North Carolina pine just and sold between August 1929, the time the machine was purchased, and 1932, the date of the kidnapping. They obliged. Since they had only been present in the markings for a short period of time, the particular nicks made by the unsharpened blades turned out to be useful in the next step.
Which was?
I searched many of the shipping locations and mostly failed at finding anything until I found the National Lumber and Millworks Corporation. After searching around this place for quite a while, I found a North Carolina pine sample that was an absolutely perfect match. It had the defect that I was looking for, along with a smaller one. Both the wood specimens shared, but I had not noticed previously. The smaller defect extinguished any doubt I had that this was the place.
What was your next step?
I was soon disheartened when I learned that the company did not keep records as their customers paid in cash. I searched to draw connections from the other pieces of wood to no avail. I had nearly lost all hope, until the defendant's arrest and the officers found they had previously worked odd jobs at the company only a few months before the kidnapping.
So what were your actions after this new puzzle piece fit in with you?
After tracking the ladder, I examined some of the planer blades found at the defendant's house by using them on a piece of wood. The markings from the 2.5-foot planer exactly matched those on the rail 16 and the pine rungs.
Was there any other important aspect to look at with these rails?
I also analyzed some of the nails found at the defendant's house. Many of these had a peon shank, like the nails used in the kidnapping pattern did. In addition to this, the cut nails I took from the attic fit perfectly in rail 16 sample.
Rail 16. Was there anything interesting about that rail?
Rail 16 is probably the soundest piece of evidence I found for this case. I ended up going to the defendant's house to look for more evidence, and find it I did.
So you found sound evidence that this rail had once been in Hopman's house?
Yes. When I brought the board with me on a visit to his house and tried lining it up with the missing space on the attic floor, it seemed to fit perfectly. I took some of the nails from the other boards in the room and tried using them to put the board back in place. The nails fit into the joints seamlessly, getting rid of any doubt that the board had come from this location. Always double-checking my work, I concluded that there were 10,000 places on this board where the nails might be driven in and would not fit exactly.
Was this the only way the board matched?
No.
It's okay.
Okay. When a tree is growing, it grows ring for almost every year it lives. We refer to these as growth rings, and they match perfectly from the board before. This was without a doubt the place the board had come from.
So, in conclusion, what does this evidence prove to you?
It proves to me that rails 12 and 13 came from a lumber mill where the defendant, Richard Hauptmann, worked. I believe for certain that rail 16 came from the attic floor of the defendant's residence during the kidnapping.
Okay, no further questions?
All right, cross-examination.
Mr. Kohler, who found the missing floorboard in Mr. Hauptmann's attic?
One of the police.
Was this police officer Lieutenant Borman?
Yes.
And did he locate this missing floorboard after 37 police officers had already searched the attic 14 times?
Yes.
When you were examining the ladder, you had to transport it, correct?
Yes.
And did you transport it by car?
Yes.
And when you were transporting by car, would it have sticked up into the seats and would people you were passing be able to see the ladder?
Objection, relevance.
I'm gonna overrule it.
Likely so.
With your observation of the ladder being made by a slovenly carpenter, do you believe that this shamefully done ladder could hold the weight of a full-grown man and a 30-pound baby?
Objection, is this leading?
It's not leading, and given his expert status, I think he can give an opinion.
It did for the most part, but didn't quite all the way, as one of the rails split when the man was climbing on the ladder.
In your affidavit, you described rail 16 as a nadir type of wood. What type of wood type was it?
I do not recall.
Okay. You also say in your affidavit that you misidentified the wood type of part of the ladder. Are you now positive that you identified every piece of wood correctly?
Absolutely certain.
Could you have made a mistake somewhere?
There's a possibility.
You also say that there is a gap in the wood between where the ladder ended and the attic plank begins, correct?
Yes.
And the growth lines, you kind of have to imagine where they line up, correct?
No, it's, you can clearly say it.
How long again between the kidnapping and when you examined the ladder was it?
About a year.
And in that year, many people touched it, correctly?
Correct.
Yeah. So there were many fingerprints on the ladder, right?
Yes.
And yet, according to fingerprint experts, there were none that matched Bruno Richard Hopkins.
I don't know.
That probably wasn't a question. The machine at the woodworking company was in use between 1929 and 1932, right?
Correct.
And they gave you records of all the times that it had been used.
Yes.
And there were probably a lot of times that it had been used within that really over a decade time frame.
Yes, but
Actually, no, it's not over a decade. That's a lot.
Yes, but the fact that the wood was North Carolina pine helped me significantly narrow down the records.
Could you have missed something that might have also worked in the records?
It is a possibility.
In the attic, the ladder, the rail 16 could have fit elsewhere, right?
There was only one floorboard missing, but it's...
Could it have fit? Could the ladder itself have fit in a different building somewhere else that you may not have ever checked?
Objection, relevance.
I'll overrule that. That's a good question.
Can you repeat that, please?
Could rail 16 fit in another building elsewhere that you may never have considered or checked?
It is a possibility, but unlikely.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yeah, I would like.
So, as you have said, you're a specialist, and you've worked for 21 years as this, right?
Correct.
So, would you say that you're pretty confident in your abilities?
Yes.
So, although there is possibility of you making a mistake, are you pretty sure that being human and being something that can make mistakes, you're actually not very likely to make a mistake?
Objection, is that leading?
Sorry.
No, I'll overrule the objection.
I'm confident that I did not make a mistake, as like I stated before, there were 10,000 other places that nail holes went when I was 16 and it didn't fit, or wouldn't have fit.
I think I have no further questions.
Any recalls? By the way, your fingerprint question is not a bad question,
Kate
just not. for the
Takala,
audience.
please contact him 3412.
And prosecution, your next witness.
Prosecution would like to call Mr. Dr. Charles Mitchell, please.
Dr. Mitchell?
Obviously a different persona.
Oh,
Wow.
Dr. Mitchell is an expert as well?
Yeah.
Yes. We'll cover what Dr. Mitchell is an expert in.
Yes.
You may begin.
Sir, please state your name and occupation to the jury.
My name is
Swear to stand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Again? There you go.
Please state your name and occupation to the jury.
My name is Dr. Charles Mitchell, and I'm licensed to conduct autopsies.
Where did you go to receive your degree in this field?
I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia.
How long have you worked in this field?
35 years.
How many autopsies have you conducted?
I've done thousands on all ages.
You conducted the autopsy on Charles Lindbergh Jr., correct?
I did conduct the autopsy.
Were you able to identify the body as that of Charles Lindbergh Jr.?
The body was in a poor state of decomposition, but I was able to identify it as Charles Lindbergh Jr.
May you please elaborate on your findings?
Yes, the baby had died due to brain hemorrhaging or bleeding out of the brain and blunt force trauma or serious injury due to the hit of a blunt object, and if hit in the head, it can cause death. The baby was hit with a blunt object on the right side of the head while laying down. There was a hole in the impact site right behind the ear, right behind the right ear. The fracture had started from behind the ear and traveled to the top of the skull. The head had been hit so hard that it caused a fracture on the other side of the head. That was a tremendous amount of force, and no accidental drop could have caused this much damage to the skull.
An officer that was at the place where the body was found filed a report that he had poked the baby in the head with a stick, which could have punctured a hole beyond the ear. Could this have caused the hole?
Absolutely not. Even though the body was in a poor state of decomposition, the bone of the skull wouldn't have broke under such little force.
However, any blunt object could have caused this hole, correct?
If hit with a strong enough force like the head of a hammer or the butt of a chisel, it can happen.
To clarify, you are testifying here today that this was not accidental.
From the evidence that I've gathered, it is clear that this was an intentional murder by brain hemorrhaging and blunt force trauma.
No further questions.
Hello again.
You know she wore red.
Okay. Will you please tell the jury again what you determined from the autopsy?
That this was an intentional murder by brain hemorrhaging and blunt force trauma.
How many years of experience do you have?
35 years.
Now, as a physician, did you find any sound facts to support what you determined?
I'm sorry, can you please restate the question?
Sorry, that's fast. As a physician, did you find any sound facts to support what you determined?
Yes.
Which were?
Well, the baby had died from brain hemorrhaging, and while it was hit on one side. It was caused, another hit was caused on the left side of the head due to it laying down possibly on a hard surface.
Okay. The baby's head had fractures on both sides, correct?
Yes.
And left side had more fractures.
No, right side did.
Can I go a little bit?
Absolutely.
Okay, so actually your affidavit states that the left side had more fractures. Did you lie under oath or on your affidavit?
There must have been a mistake.
Okay. So, and in addition to that, the left side, I believe you said it was, had a hole behind the ear, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you believe that it is reasonable to conclude that the baby was killed by head trauma?
And brain hemorrhaging.
Okay. Will you please explain to the jury how the hole in the baby's skull was formed?
Well, if hit with a strong enough force, it can happen due to hitting it. It can chip off. Yeah.
I'm going to refer back to your affidavit here, where you stated that an officer said he poked the head with a stick, which made the hole You also mentioned that even though the body was in a bad state of decomposition, the skull would break under such little force. So you stated that was how the hole was formed.
That was a reporter officer, and I stated it wouldn't have broken under such little force.
No, you said it would break.
It was a typo. And so it wouldn't have.
That would have been helpful information beforehand. All right, I'm going to need a moment here because my entire thing is messed. Thank you. All right, so you said in your affidavit that it is clear that Bruno Hauptmann murdered the baby, correct?
Yes.
All right, and you conducted the autopsy.
Yes.
So please explain how you know that the baby was murdered. The body, as you said yourself, was in a bad state of decomposition, and all you could judge the death by were the fractures on the side of the skulls.
Yes. Well, due to the brain is an important part of the body, it's clear that that it was hit because it was bleeding, and let me think here. And due to the fractures, the baby had died due to that. Yes.
Okay, as a licensed physician, I'm sure you know the difference between accidental killing fractures and murder fractures. Will you please explain these differences to the jury?
Well, considering that the amount of force had put in, that I could tell was put into this, it was very clear that it was an intentional murder. Because somebody dropping an object, even like a brick, wouldn't have broken all of that, like, wouldn't have caused all the fractures that it had.
So you don't think those fractures could have been formed by the baby being dropped? The ladder used for the kidnapping was set on mud on a slippery day, as Ann Lindbergh testified, and could have easily slipped. Are you saying that the idea of the baby accidentally being dropped on a slippery night is completely irrational?
It can be possible.
Okay, so since you've been in the forensic autopsy field for 35 years, right?
Yes.
I assume you are usually able to determine what killed the victim by the state of the body.
Yes.
Then what object was used to kill Charles Lindbergh Jr.?
Well, there could have been couple objects, since there's many blunt objects. So it could have been like a butt of a chisel or a head of a hammer.
Okay, is it possible it could have been a gun?
No.
Okay. So, all right. Okay. All you had to base the baby's death on were the fractures of small. Theoretically, those fractures could be caused by the baby being dropped accidentally, an object accidentally falling on him, the baby hitting his head, or having a medical condition. Are you saying that none of these are possible and that you can say beyond reasonable doubt that the baby was murdered with a blunt object while lying on his side, and that there are no other possibilities?
There are other possibilities, but it's highly unlikely due to the fact that the amount of fractures on the size and the amount of fractures on the baby's skull.
Okay, so it is possible. It is possible that something else could have happened.
But highly unlikely.
All right. You also said in your affidavit that it was Bruno Hauptmann who murdered the baby. May I ask how you know it was him?
I do not recall.
Well, did the baby have a note on him saying, "I am Bruno Hauptmann and I killed this baby"? So then how were you able to say in your affidavit that you were certain that Bruno Hauptmann killed the baby?
I do not recall.
All right, Your Honor, that is all.
Okay. You redirect?
No, she's got it all.
All right. Please do. Prosecution, ready for your last case?
The prosecution would like to call Walter Lyle to the witness stand. Mr. Lyle.
Are you going to be an expert? No. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth within the rules of the mock trial? Okay, maybe seated.
Can you tell us your name and your profession?
My name is Walter Lyle, and I currently work as a gas station attendant on 127th Street, Lexington Avenue, New York City.
How did you first come to be involved with this case?
It was a fairly normal day at work when a suspicious man walked past me.
How is this man suspicious to you?
He paid for his gas with a $10 gold certificate and I knew this were no longer being made, so I questioned if the bank would accept it.
How did you initially react to being given this certificate?
I wrote down the man's license plate number. man had bought 5 gallons of special gasoline, which totaled to a cost of 93 cents, which made it very strange that he told me I could keep the change of his $10 bill.
What else did you do in response?
I went to the bank to check if the certificate, or I wrote,
You mentioned before you wrote down a license plate number, right?
Can you please repeat that?
You just mentioned before that you wrote down his license plate number.
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall his license number?
Yes. 4U1341.
How did the man react to all of your suspicion?
He said he had, when I questioned him about the certificate, he said, or him letting me keep the certificate, he said he had 100 more just like it.
And did you ever go to the bank to see if your bill was valid?
Yes. At the bank, the bill was found to be part of the ransom money paid in the Lindbergh kidnapping, and the police used the license plate number I had written down to find Richard.
Yeah.
Find Richard.
Did the police contact you again after that?
Yes, I was later asked to identify Hauptmann in the police lineup.
Could you successfully do so?
Yes.
Is this man in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Can you please point out this man now?
Yes.
What is this man wearing?
A blue shirt.
Yes, in the court records, please note that Mr. Lyle has identified the defendant, Mr. Bruno Hauptmann, in court today. And you are certain this is the man who bought gas from you with the gold certificate?
Without a doubt.
Okay, no further questions.
Mr. Lyle, you stated that he said you can keep the change from a $10 bill even though the gasoline cost you 93 cents. Is it uncommon for someone to be generous?
Yes.
Exactly.
It's already out there, but I would sustain it.
Exactly how long ago did the gold certificates go out of use?
I do not recall.
Is it possible that you had misread the license plate?
It is possible.
And how long ago did this encounter occur?
I do not recall.
Are you certain, absolutely certain, that this man is one and the same as the one you saw that ordinary workday?
Yes.
And as a gas station attendant, you're unlikely to have many credentials. Therefore, why should we trust your story?
Objection, speculation?
It's not speculation. Yeah, relevance.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Does that conclude the state of New Jersey's prosecution case? That's where you're
Wait, step 3, just so stand up, turn around 3 times.
Your Honor, the defendant would like to call Bruno Richard Hauptmann to the stand.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth within the rules of the mock trial.
I do. Okay.
All right. Please state your name and a little bit about yourself.
My name is Bruno Richard Hauptmann. I was born on November 26th of 1899 in Kamenz, Germany. When I was young, I joined the German Boy Scouts. And in 1917, my father died, and later that year, my brothers Max and Herman died.
So who is your family?
My current family is Anna Hauptmann, my wife, and my son Manfred Hauptmann, who was born on November 3rd, 1933.
So, in your affidavit, it stated that you were drafted into the Army. Can you please tell us about that?
I remember one specific experience in September or October of 1918 where I had gotten gassed in an attack and I was hit in the head with shrapnel. I had gotten knocked out and left for dead. I dragged myself back to base and was back on duty that evening.
So why did you decide to come to America?
Well, so in Germany, I had to lead a life of crime to simply feed myself and my family. So which I've always considered stealing to be morally wrong. So in 1923, I decided to make a better life for myself by coming to America.
So did you have any jobs while in America?
Yes, I worked as a machinist, a dyer, a carpenter for the National Lumber and Millwork Company, and a few other jobs.
What were you doing on the day of the kidnapping?
I woke up around 6 o'clock and drove my wife, Anna, to her job at the bakery. I then came home and...
The following students to the office: Brian Dixon, Matthew DiGiacomo, Frankie Mann, Gavin Culp, Matthew Gonder, Aubrey Uba, Alana Hadwin.
Continue. I then came home and got on the subway to go to the Majestic Hotel where I tried to get work. I was refused work there, so I went back to the Union Hall where I had gotten my working papers to attempt to get my money back. They refused, so I then went to Radio City to try and get work there. I did not succeed in getting work there. So I then went back home on the subway and then drove and got my wife Anna from her bakery job around 7 o'clock, and then we went and ate at the Frederickson's restaurant until about 9 o'clock, when we then came home and went straight to bed.
So how and why did you get arrested?
I got arrested because I had used a gold certificate at a gas station, and then the police had started tailing me because of this, and I thought that they had come to deport me back to Germany, so I ran from them.
So how did you end up getting the gold certificates?
My friend Isidore Fish had left on, who is my business partner, had left on a trip, and he had given me a shoebox saying only that it contained important papers. I put it up in a high shelf in my closet, and then later when I had gone to get a broom from my closet, I noticed that there was water leaking onto it, so I took it and I, trying to make sure that the papers inside were okay, I opened up the box and laid out all the money to, there was a sum of about $15,000. So I laid it out to dry, and then I put it in a basket and covered it with a light blanket.
So why did you decide to use the money?
Well, so Isidore Fish had owed me a sum of $7,500 at the time of his death, and so I felt as though some of that money was owed to me.
Back to when you were arrested, how were you treated while in custody?
I was treated horribly while in custody. I was beaten, and I was forced to misspell certain words and write letters in unusual ways so that they would match the handwriting on the ransom notes. I was poked in, they poked me in the ribs and would not let me sleep until I had done this.
Is there anything else you would like to state?
I'm disappointed in the way that that I was treated while in police custody, and I just hope that you do not condemn me to a fate which I do not deserve.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You have been planning this crime for a year, correct?
No.
Do you realize the amount of evidence against you?
Yes.
As a father, do you have any remorse or sorrow for what you did to the young child?
I did not do anything to the Lindbergh child.
Do you have a previous criminal history?
Yes.
Objection. Relevance?
They discussed his previous criminal history on
It's
direct.
out there, he put it out there during direct testimony, so it's very clear.
Does one of your convictions include breaking into and robbing a house using a ladder?
Yes.
Do you have a habit of breaking into houses using ladders?
No.
Would it be correct that Charles Lindbergh Jr. was kidnapped from his home using a ladder?
I would assume so.
Did you rob two women with baby strollers at gunpoint?
Yes.
In Germany, did you steal from people in total 5 times?
I believe so.
This means you have a habit of stealing, right?
No longer.
But you stole the money from Isidore Fish and the baby from the Lindbergh family.
I did not steal any money from Isidore Fish, and I did not steal the baby from the Lindbergh family.
Is kidnapping a child essentially stealing a child from his family?
Yes.
Do you also have a history of lying?
No.
Did you smuggle yourself into America illegally?
Yes.
So smuggling yourself into the country illegally is considered lying about your true identity, correct?
No, because I was
A lie is defined as a false or misleading impression
You don't consider not admitting your true identity and hiding yourself to get there misleading.
Nobody knew I was on the boat.
But they didn't know you were there, so if they were to say, was Bruno Richard Howman on this boat, they would have said no, which was false because you were on the boat. So that's misleading. They didn't know the truth that you were on the boat.
But I didn't lie to anybody.
So no one should believe a word you say because you have a history of lying.
That is not true.
How many places did you go on the day of the kidnapping?
Well, so first I went to the bakery, so that's 1, and then back home, so that's 2. And then I went to the Majestic Hotel, so that's 3. And then I went to the Union Hall, so that's 4. And then I went to Radio City, so that's 5. And then I went back home, so that's 6. And then I went back to the bakery, so that's 7. And then I went to Frederickson, so that's 8. And then I went home, so that's 9.
Okay. Is it correct that you left your home at 6:45 a.m. that morning and returned home at 5 p.m.? According to your affidavit, that is correct.
Well, I returned home before I went to the subway, so I'm confused as to what you're stating.
You left your home at 6:45 that morning, and after your whole day was over, you finally came home and stayed home at 5 o'clock.
No. That's not what my affidavit states. My affidavit states that I came home around 9 o'clock.
So in the span of about 10 hours, you went to 6 places and stopped at home twice.
What?
It says that you left your home at 6:45 to take your wife to the bakery. You came back home then,
Yep.
and then you went to the Majestic Hotel, yes, tried to find all your jobs, and then you returned home at 5 p.m.
I also went to Radio City in the Union Hall.
Yes, but then you finally returned home at 5 p.m.
Okay, and then I went to go get my wife at the bakery.
Yes. So in that span of about 10 hours, you went to 6 places and stopped at home twice.
Objection, Your Honor. Ask when answered.
Sustained.
Would it be correct to state that you were riding the subway or walking most of that day?
Yes, probably.
So how is it possible that you went to 9 places on foot, all in the span of 10 hours in New York?
Because I walked. I'm not spending 3 hours at every place or whatever.
You were struggling for money at the time of the kidnapping, right?
Yes.
How much money were you making weekly?
I do not recall.
Would it be correct that you were would it be correct that you were making $50 weekly at the time of the kidnapping?
Probably, yeah.
Were you desperate enough for money to steal a child if you would then receive a $50,000 ransom in return?
No, that's horrible.
Did you meet with John Condon, the man who delivered the ransom money?
No.
Is it correct that at the gas station you paid with a bill of the ransom money?
Yes.
Then how did you obtain that ransom money if you claim you didn't meet with Dr. Condon?
As I said before, my friend Isidore Fish had given me that money.
Did Isidore Fish say that the shoebox was of great value?
He said that it contained important papers.
According to your affidavit, he stated it was of great value. Or according to Hans Klavenberg's affidavit, he stated that when he handed it to you.
Objection. This side? Out of scope.
Yeah.
How long after you received the box did you open it?
I do not quite recall.
So you received a box of great value, and you didn't bother to open it until some rain damage.
I did not feel as though it was my right to open it. However, when the rain had damaged the box, I decided that I should open it to make sure that none of the papers inside were damaged.
What did you find when you opened the box?
I found 4 rolls of money wrapped in a light wax-like paper.
And that is the money you spent at the gas station?
Yes.
So you did not open the box because it was your friend's property, but yet when you opened it, you stole some of his property inside.
I did not steal any of his property. He had already owed me a sum of $7,500, and at this point he had sadly died, so I felt as though some of that money was owed to me.
Regardless if he owed you money or not, did he know you were taking the money from the box, and did he give permission for you to take that money?
He was dead.
Before he died, he did not give you permission to open the box and take the money.
Objection.
Correct.
Asked and answered.
So do you make a habit of stealing from your friends as well as strangers and a family?
Objection, ask and answer, exactly.
I think it's becoming a little bit of a hostile witness situation. So it's kind of demanding answers from them. So I'm gonna not allow that question.
Okay. So it's easy to blame the dead guy because he can't defend himself, correct? If he's dead.
There you go.
Do you have experience as a carpenter?
Yes, some.
Did you build the ladder used to kidnap the Lindbergh baby?
No.
Your Honor, do I have permission to enter P3 into evidence? And P2?
It's already in evidence.
Oh, sorry. But P3,
This,
but this is a forward from your attic, correct?
Yes.
So then why was it used in the making of the ladder if it was not built by you?
I don't know. I mean, any of those boards could have been from somebody's attic, so why is it specifically mine that we're talking about?
Because it fit into your attic floorboards.
Okay.
So you're just saying someone entered your home and took a random floorboard?
They may have. I have no idea. How do you know
I
that?
mean, you have a
those could be
history.
someone's?
You have a history of stealing, so you would know what people would steal for. Would you go into a house and steal a piece of wood?
I have not stolen anything since I've entered America.
So this does not look familiar to you, although it is from your home.
No, I don't make a habit of memorizing my attic.
So are the statements, "You're a carpenter, wood from the kidnap ladder fit into your missing floorboard, and you have a previous criminal history involving ladders," all correct?
Yes.
Do you understand why any reasonable person would believe you made the ladder?
No.
Moving on, was the phone number of Dr. John Condon, the communicator between the kidnapper and the Lindberghs, written on your closet wall?
Apparently. I was unaware of this.
So you didn't write it?
No, I did not.
That it was found in your home?
Yes.
So again, you're blaming other people for things done in your home.
I did not write it, so.
So who are you going to blame for this?
Objection, out of scope.
So who do you believe wrote the phone number?
It could have simply been a reporter that had entered my house later.
So now you're blaming a reporter for something written in your home, and you just earlier blamed a random person for taking that out of your home?
I am unaware of why there is a phone number in my closet.
Do you find it easy to blame others for crimes you have committed?
I haven't
Objection.
committed.
Speculation.
I'm gonna go with ask and answer, but it's good.
So even though multiple people have identified you as a kidnapper, you still claim you are not guilty.
I am not guilty.
But you ran from the police, correct?
Yes.
Someone who runs from the police has something to hide, right?
I didn't want to get deported. I have a family here.
Are the statements John Condon's phone number was found in your home, rail 16 of the kidnap ladder fit your floorboards, you were in possession of the ransom money, all correct?
Yes.
No further questioning.
Mr. Howley, what exactly was in those carriages that those women had?
They had food stamps. They were hoarding the food stamps, and they had just mounds of it. So I felt as though, I should be able to have food that night.
And why did you smuggle yourself into America?
Because I've always felt as though stealing was morally wrong, so I felt that I needed to find some way to get away from that.
And I would like to clarify that the amount of time you were actually out was around 15 hours, not 10.
Okay.
And also, in your affidavit, it stated that you drive a green 1931 Dodge to work every day.
Yes.
Would you say you were a good carpenter?
Not particularly.
Oh. So,
Well, I didn't go a ladder,
so wasn't your house rented out to you?
Yes.
And again, why did you run from the police?
Because I was fearful that I was going to be deported back to Germany and taken away from my family.
No further questions, Your Honor.
So if you feel stealing is wrong, why did you steal twice in America?
I'm confused. When did I steal?
Isidore Fish, you stole his money, and the baby.
I did not.
Ask and answer.
If the ladder had some flaws, and you as a carpenter have flaws, wouldn't that indicate that you are connected?
I doubt that I could have built a ladder.
But this is from your floorboards,
Okay,
and fit into the ladder.
okay.
No further questioning.
Any more? Next up now. That right there, boys and girls, is a shining example of why defendants very rarely ever testify in cases against themselves, because they just get chewed apart by the others inside.
So this is an authentic experience. This is an authentic experience.
It is.
All right.
Defense can call their next witness.
Defense would like to call Hans Loppenberg.
And Hans, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and all the rules of the mock trial?
I do.
All right, are you testifying as an expert today?
No.
Okay. You may begin.
Please state your name and tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Hans Kloppenberg, and I'm a 49-year-old longtime friend of Bruno Haltman. Sorry. I live in the Cassville section of Jackson Township, and I work as a manager in a factory in Queens, New York.
What is your relation with Bruno Haltman?
I've known Mr. Bruno Haltman for a while. I prefer to call him Richard, though.
What kinds of things do you like to do with Mr. Haltman?
Well, every first Saturday of the month, we have what we call musical nights, where I play guitar and my friend Richard plays the mandolin.
Were you and Mr. Haltman together on the night of April 2nd, 1932, which was the night the ransom money was exchanged at the cemetery?
Yeah. Yeah, we were together that night. But the police say that he was collecting the money, but he couldn't have been because he only left the room for about 5 minutes at a time.
So you're here to testify today that your friend Richard Haltman could not have been at the cemetery collecting ransom money because he was with you at your monthly music nights?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you know a man named Isidore Fish?
Yeah, but not well. I knew him through Richard.
When was the last time you saw Isidore Fish?
He was going out of the country, and Mr. Richard hosted a going away party for him and invited me.
Did anything suspicious happen at the party?
Yeah. It was there that I saw Mr. Fish give Richard a shoebox, and he put it away, and then we carried on as we were.
Finally, Mr. Kloppenberg, do you think your friend Richard Haltman is capable of kidnapping and murdering a baby for money?
Absolutely not. Since he moved to America, he's changed for the better and is now very loving to his wife and wouldn't want to harm his reputation.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Hello, Mr. Kloppenberg.
What's up?
Is it possible that someone else could have been at the cemetery for Richard Haltman? As previously stated in other testimonies, Dr. John Condon was the one that was receiving the ransom money at the cemetery.
Okay.
So do you recall if there was a phone in the house on music nights?
I don't know, probably.
So, is it then possible that in these short 5-minute periods of time, Mr. Hauptman was gone, that he could have been communicating with Dr. John Conley?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Just to be clear, Mr. Hauptman did not have to be at the cemetery to receive the money.
Yeah, that's how you receive money. You have to be at the location where you get the money to receive the money.
Be involved in receiving.
Oh.
Objection, asked and answered.
Well, just to clarify, at the party that Richard had with you and Isidore Fish, you said in your affidavit, and it's been previously stated, that Isidore Fish did give Hauptman a box with certificates in it.
Correct.
No further questions.
You're correct. Let's make order next witness.
Defense, I'm going to call for your
You guys have any experts testifying?
Yeah, we have one.
What's the name?
John Trent.
Is that your only expert? And Peter Summer, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth within the rules of the mock trial? I do. You may be seated.
State your name and occupation.
My name is Peter Summer, and I'm a fingerprint expert, but that is not the reason I was called for this case.
How do you relate to the defendant then?
I'm an eyewitness for Bruno Hauptman.
Where do you work?
I work in the
According to the affidavit.
According to your affidavit, it says you work at the Building and Supply Division and Department of Public Welfare in New York City. When and where were you on the evening of March 1st, 1932?
I was giving fingerprint instruction to Willie Mackerman, a policeman.
Why were you in Fairview giving a How did you get to Fairview?
I traveled by trolley car.
Where were you headed?
I was headed to the 42nd Street Ferry, Weehawken, New Jersey.
What time did you arrive at the ferry?
I arrived between 12 and 12:20.
Were there any suspicious men or women on the ferry?
Yes, there were 2 men that were helping a woman on the ferry.
How long were you observing them?
About 8 or 10 minutes from the New Jersey side to the New York side.
What was suspicious about them?
They were helping a woman with a baby onto the ferry.
What did the woman look like?
She had a sort of low-cut coat, and she had a pearl necklace.
Did anything appear suspicious about her?
Yes, she was holding a baby.
From the time she got up, what was she doing? In your affidavit, you said she appeared nervous and she
was nervous and she had one foot out, like she was about to jump out.
And what about the baby? What did he look like?
He was blonde, about 2 years old, and was in a one-piece nightie.
Tell us more about the actions of the shorter man.
The shorter man did help the woman on, but he did not get on the trolley himself.
Had you ever seen this woman before, and did you see her after?
I had not seen her before, but I did see her in the newspaper.
When did you learn about the Lindbergh case?
10:45 the next morning.
Did you report the incident that you had seen the night before to the police?
I reported the incident I had seen the night before to Detective Mulaney of the 81st Precinct on March 2nd. They told me that they had hundreds of clues, although hundreds of people would come in and said they saw men with babies all over the country that night. I also sent a letter to the state police, Trenton, New Jersey, but I never got a response and nobody ever came to investigate.
Anything you would like to add?
Through this, I feel strongly that these two men were involved with the kidnapping. If this baby that I myself got to saw was in fact Charles Lindbergh Jr., then this should be enough to assure the fact that Bruno Hauptmann did not kidnap and murder the baby.
Your Honor, that is all.
False.
Mr. Summers, is a woman holding a baby suspicious?
Well, she was acting very strange and nervous.
Okay. And how far away were you from the woman you saw across the ferry?
A couple feet away.
Yeah. And this woman in your affidavit you described as having wearing a brown coat with brown fur cuffs and a brown fur collar. She had a low-cut waist and she was wearing a pearl necklace. Is this what you actually saw?
Yes.
And then you said it was between 12 and 12:20 at night, correct?
Yes.
And is it also true that the only working lights were the headlights and side lights, making only parts of the boat barely lit?
I suppose so.
Do you have night vision, Mr. Summer?
I don't think so.
So is it safe to say that you didn't have a perfect sight of the adult woman, let alone the tiny blonde baby she was apprehensively holding?
That is reasonable.
So am I also correct in saying that you are not 100% sure that the baby you saw was Charles Lindbergh Jr.?
Yes, that is also a fair statement.
You came in here today, under oath, swearing that you were positive that you saw Charles Lindbergh Jr. on the boat. You even said that on your affidavit. And now you're saying that you're not sure it's him?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Are there any other things you lied about in your affidavit, Mr. Summer?
No.
Well, how can anyone be sure of that? Because you lied about completely believing that the baby was, in fact, Charles Lindbergh Jr.
Objection, speculation.
I'll overrule that.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Well, how can anyone be sure that there was nothing else you lied about? Because you lied about completely believing that the baby you saw was, in fact, Charles Lindbergh Jr. Okay, moving on. In your affidavit, you say that the police told you they had received hundreds of tips of people saying that they saw men with babies all over the country. So is it possible that you just saw a random baby being handed off as those other people saw, or at least claim they did?
Well, the baby that I saw matched the description, and the people who were handling him were acting suspiciously.
Okay. So you think that there are no other babies in New Jersey that have blonde hair and look about 2 years old?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. So you think that there are no other people in New Jersey that have blonde hair and are about 2 years old?
No, but there probably aren't very many.
Okay. So then is it possible that you didn't see Charles Lindbergh Jr.?
There's a chance, yes.
No further questions.
Very good.
Is it possible that the ferries had lights on it so you could see?
Yes.
You never specified that the baby was Lindbergh, but it could possibly have been him, correct?
Yes.
Earlier it was mentioned that 2 women were helping the baby in the boat. Is it possible that this woman that you saw was one of those women? Earlier, 2 women were mentioned that were helping the baby on the boat Nellie. Is it possible that this is one of the 2 women that you saw?
Yes.
And is it also possible that, just since you're near New Jersey, this could have definitely been one with more than one people?
Yes.
No further questions.
Contrary to what you said during the cross-examination, you claim that the lights were bright enough for you to see, but the lights were very dim on the boat, making it very hard to see people. Am I correct?
Objection asked and answered.
I think he's going for clarification, so I'm going to go over.
Okay, that's no further questions.
Okay. Here we go. Okay, let me step in. Let's control their next witness. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, within the rules of the mock trial? Okay, you may be seated. Remember to speak clearly.
Please state your name and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Sam Chacon. I was born May 22nd, 1898, and I'm a 38-year-old white male, and I live in the Bronx neighborhood of New York.
Do you have a family?
Yes, I have an amazing family and a beautiful wife. I have 5 kids, 3 boys and 2 girls.
And what is your occupation?
I've been doing business since August 6, 1934, and I currently work as a radio repairman in a shop.
Do you have a connection with Isidore Fish?
Yes, he came into my shop one time asking for his radio to be repaired as it wasn't working.
How long did it take to repair the radio?
It was in my shop for about 5 days being repaired.
Did you make a record of it?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, I would like to enter in Exhibit CD and evidence. Can you verify this is the receipt you made for Mr. Fish?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I please show the jury?
Yeah.
What happened when Fish came back for the radio?
He came back to the shop about 5 days later, and he had a shoebox. He had a box on him, or he had a package on him about the size of his shoebox. The radio wasn't quite ready yet, so he left his shoebox there and came back about 6 hours later at 8 p.m. to get his radio.
Your Honor, no further questions.
Ross?
So, Mr. Chaperone, on your affidavit, you stated that you were diagnosed as insane a few months ago.
Yes.
Well, and you were there a few times, though.
Yes.
So, we're supposed to believe that anything you say is correct, even though you could be insane right now.
Yes, because I'm no longer insane. That's why I'm not in the insane asylum anymore.
Still, how do we know if anything that you... Still, how do we know if anything you're saying, or you have stated on your affidavit is actually true?
Objection asked and answered.
I'm going to overrule that. He's asking you to verify his affidavit.
Can you repeat it?
So, how do we know if anything you stated is actually true?
Because I was released from the place that I was staying at for a reason.
Well, I don't think we should. But anyway, we'll let them decide. And even if what you say is true, how do we know that Fish wasn't just using money that Bruno had allowed him to, considering Bruno thought that the money was his in the end?
What? Can you repeat that?
Even if what you...
Out of scope.
Speculation. He's asking for him to basically give an answer for somebody else. What was going on in their mind. Can't do that.
I have no further questions.
Okay. Can you redirect?
About how long were you in the mental asylums each time?
I cannot recall.
Okay. How long ago were you in the asylums?
I do not recall either.
No further questions.
Recross? Recross?
Lucy, Lucy.
So you're saying someone with a mental illness can quickly 100% recover and they will no longer be insane?
No.
No further questions.
Redirect.
You stated in your affidavit that you were in the mental asylums a few years ago, 5 times for about 3 months each time. Is that correct?
Yes.
So it was a few years ago. So do you think you would not be considered mentally insane now?
Yes, I am no longer mentally insane.
No further questions.
Recross. Next, can call their next witness. This is your expert, correct?
Yeah, the detective likes to call Dr.
Mr. Training, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth within the rules of law? I do. Good, maybe so.
Nice and loud, slow.
Can you please tell the jury a little bit about yourself?
My name is John Emertrunley. I'm a handwriting expert from East St. Louis in Illinois.
How confident are you in your work?
Very. I've appeared in court about 387 times over my 40 years of working as a handwriting expert. I've appeared in the Pax Price case, the U.W. Thompson case, and the case of Edward Ulmer versus the Southern Mangay Steel Company. I was successful in all 3 of these cases.
Have you thoroughly looked over the photographs of the ransom notes provided by the state for this case?
Yes.
Have you also looked over the writing samples given by Mr. Hoffman for use in the trial?
Yes.
Can you determine what hand the kidnapper used when writing the ransom notes?
The ransom note looked to be written by a left-handed person who then switched to their right hand when they noticed their mistakes.
Can you tell us anything about the individual letters?
When I look at the individual letters, I noticed there was a difference in the letter Y and the letter K when looking in the Y's and the K's in the ransom notes and the Y's and K's written by Houtman. I can conclude that they are not written by the same person. The Y's and K's in Houtman's writing sample lean to the right. When I looked at the Y's and K's in the ransom note, I can see with great confidence that they were not written by the same person.
Just to clarify, the Y's and the K's from the ransom note are different than the Y's and the K's in the writing samples given by Mr. Hoffman.
That is correct.
Is there anything else you would like to share with the jury?
Yes. When I examined the letter A using the ransom notes, they appeared almost square or box-like. The letter A in Houtman's requested writing looked like an oval where the height preceded the width.
To clarify once more, the A's in the ransom notes were different than the A's in the writing samples given by Mr. Hoffman.
Most definitely.
Is there anything you would like to tell the jury about the ransom notes as a whole?
When I think about it, if Houtman were to have written the ransom notes, then he would have had to completely change the way that he writes, which is not humanly possible. If Houtman did write the letters, he would have had to keep in mind the way that he wrote the letter in the ransom note and apply none of those characteristics to the writing for the rest of his life.
To clarify for the jury, your professional knowledge on the subject has helped you come to the conclusion that it would be next to impossible for Mr. Hoffman to have written the ransom notes.
Yes, nobody can completely change their style of writing.
What is your final conclusion?
Based on this evidence, I urge you to find Mr. Bruno Richard Houtman not guilty.
That's it.
Cross-examination.
Mr. Trendley, in your affidavit, you stated you were only able to study photocopies. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are you sure that these photos were clear and were not tainted or blurry?
Yes.
You also state that you believe you can determine the hand of your writer.
Yes.
What hand does the defendant, Mr. Bruno, write with? Or Mr. Bruno Hoffman?
I do not recall.
As a handwriting expert, shouldn't you have been able to tell from the writing samples provided by Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
But you don't. No.
No.
Okay. We would also like to ask what college you attended.
I do not recall.
Okay. And in your affidavit, you were very clear that
you thought the letters Y and K differed in the two samples of writing. And now here you've testified that you believe they were different because of a slant to the left.
The sign is the right.
Are you aware that you did not put this information in your affidavit?
Roman Badalko,
I believe we did.
Sabrina Walbrum,
Okay.
and Connor Reed.
No further questions.
Again, Nicolette Hurston, Roman Badalko, Sabrina Walbrum,
Let's control their next witness.
and Connor Reed. Report to the office.
Mrs. Halpman, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, within the rules of the mock trial? You may be seated. Remember to speak up into the microphone.
Good morning. State your name and relationship to the defendant.
My name is Anna Shukla Hartman and I'm the wife of Bruno Richard Helton.
Where and when were you born?
I was born in Baden-Württemberg, Germany on November 19th, 1898.
How old are you?
I am presently 37 years old.
Will you tell us a bit about your childhood?
I was born in Deutschland, Germany, and at the age of 25 I moved to the United States.
When exactly did you move to the United States?
1923.
Once you arrived in the States, where did you work?
I worked for a couple with a German laundress named Lina Oldinger.
How did you meet your husband?
Lina took me to a party and there I met Bruno.
What events happened following the party?
Bruno walked me to a subway and in the weeks following we started seeing each other more and more.
How long were you and Richard courting before you finally got married?
We were courting for about 2 years before getting married on October 10th, 1925.
How long have you been married to Richard?
We have been married for about 9 years.
What is your relationship with Richard? What type of person and husband is he?
Richard is a very caring and loving husband and he surprises me with things, puppies and flowers.
Where do you and Richard presently live?
I presently live in the Bronx, New York.
Where do you presently work?
I presently work for Herr Frederick's Bakery on 3185 Dyer Avenue.
You signed your affidavit that a burglar stole your engagement ring before you were married, correct? How did Richard react to that?
Yeah, Richard reacted by putting a new ring on my finger while I was sleeping weeks before the wedding.
Would you describe him as a loving and faithful husband?
I would describe him as a loving and faithful husband.
When was your son born in relationship to the kidnapping of Charles and Bridget?
My son Manfred Heltman was born about a year before the Lindbergh kidnapping.
Where were you the morning Richard was arrested?
Me and my neighbor Louisa Schussler were taking a walk when she heard noises coming from my apartment. We went upstairs to find Bruno sitting very confused on the bed and the policeman throwing all of our things around.
Did the police tell you that morning what Richard had been accused of?
9, all they said was he is going to burn in hell for this.
Where were you at the time of the kidnapping?
Me and Richard were at a restaurant in the Bronx, New York.
Was Richard with you the entire time?
Yes, we were enjoying ourselves.
Alright, Richard was accused because he was supposedly found to have $15,000 of the ransom money in his possession. Did you know about this money?
9, I did not, but he was most likely to surprise me just as he had done many of the other things.
Do you need to take more?
I am good.
Richard claims that the money was given to him by a friend named Isidore Fish. What do you know about Isidore? Have you ever met him?
I had met Isidore a couple times at several parties. Isidore was a good man, and it wouldn't surprise me that he would be friends with Richard.
Were you aware that Isidore passed away last year?
Yes, it's tuberculosis.
Do you believe Richard's story about Fish?
I do. I've never had a reason to doubt my husband before.
Would the husband you know ever kidnap and murder a child for money?
9, he is a great father, loving father. And you're both appalled by this absurd accusation. And I would just like to say, really, Richard is innocent in this. He's just simply another victim of this kidnapping.
Is there anything else you would like to tell the jury?
Thank you.
Your Honor, that is all.
Good morning. Are you married to Richard Bruno Hauptmann?
Yeah.
Is your husband nice to you?
Yeah.
Do you have a happy marriage?
Yeah.
Is it true that he provides for you?
Yeah.
Is it true that you have a child?
Yeah, it's not gonna help him.
Do you know that if Bruno Hauptmann is found guilty, he will go to jail for a long time and probably die?
Yeah.
Would you be scared to live alone and provide for your child by yourself?
Yeah.
Would you lie for him if it meant that you could save his life?
9.
Just to be clear, you would not lie for your husband if it meant you could save his life.
9. I meant yeah.
How did Richard get the money for the new engagement ring?
I did not recall.
Do you think that a person making $50 a week could surprise his wife with a new wedding ring?
I do not recall.
Does this indicate he stole the ring and yet proves that he has a history of stealing?
9, possibly not.
No further questions.
Okay. Can you elaborate a bit on your marriage? With what's your type of relationship with the defendant?
We are married.
Okay. Do you believe that lying is morally wrong?
Yeah.
What would you do to save your husband?
To do everything I can to prove that he is innocent.
But you would not lie.
I would not lie.
In the time you've known him, has he ever been a man that seems to have lied or cheat or steal?
9.
Okay. Do you and your husband both work?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I cry.
So do you and your husband usually save money when you earn it?
Yeah.
So you don't just go out and spend everything once you make it. So is it possible that your husband could have saved up money that you guys had both worked to make?
Yeah.
That's all.
You said that you would do anything to save and protect him, so this means that you would lie, correct?
9.
So you would not do anything to save him, everything.
Did not say that.
No further questions.
Yeah. See. Yeah. See.
Has your husband ever directly lied to you before?
9.
And have you ever directly lied to him?
9.
So you guys do not involve lies in your relationship?
We do not.
So there's no reason that you would lie here today to save your husband?
That is correct.
No further questions.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the trial. So you will now hear closing arguments from the side.
Today you have heard about the horrible kidnapping of Charles Lindbergh Jr. The defense has accused my client, Bruno Hauptmann, of kidnapping and killing a poor and innocent child. You have heard from Bruno first, and he stated he would never do this to a child. He is an extremely loving and caring father and husband. He also stated that he feels that stealing is morally wrong. That's why he moved to America. Next you heard from Peter Summer, who testifies that he saw a blonde baby on a boat about Charles Lindbergh's age, Jr.'s age. This baby was with two men and a woman. Hans Kloppenberg gave an alibi for when Hauptmann was accused of being at the cemetery. He said that he was at Hauptmann's house in the Bronx for a musical night. Kloppenberg also said he saw Isidore Fish giving Hauptmann a shoebox that had $14,000 in it. As you know, the shoebox was part of the reason Hauptmann was convicted. Sam Chapone stated that he fixed a radio for Fish and saw the same shoebox that was given to Hauptmann. Then you heard from the handwriting expert, John M. Trinley, who said that he can state with great confidence that the letters were not written by the same person. Anna Hauptmann said that Bruno was a caring and loving father who would never do this to a baby. She also testified that she was with Bruno at a restaurant in the Bronx at the same time of the kidnapping of the baby. Bruno never left her side. Charles Lindbergh Jr. was a child of a celebrity, and there's always a risk imposed to famous babies such as him. He is an innocent bystander of this case, and no one should have to deal with this. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client is an innocent father and husband. The defense and Anna Hauptmann beg you to not make Bruno Hauptmann another victim of this treacherous case. My client is being targeted because he's German. Would you like to come home today and be met by dozens of FBI agents who are arresting you for a crime you would never commit, all because of your nationality? We do not choose what country that we come from. The defendant never asked to be German, and he never wanted this life for his wife and young son. We know the horrible thoughts Americans have for the Germans today. Mr. Hauptmann came to America to start a better life. Why would he want to ruin it by kidnapping and killing a baby? My client is being accused when Isidore Fish was seen with the shoebox filled with the ransom money. He was seen with the shoebox giving it to my client. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have the difficult decision to make. You can send this innocent man to his death and add another victim to this horrendous case. And if you do, know that this man is innocent and that you have added another casualty to the kidnapping. Or you can make the right move and let him go home to his young son and loving wife. My client is innocent, and you could be sending him to an early, undeserved death. We have poked many holes in the case. Please come back with the verdict of not guilty and let my client go back to enjoying his life as a free American and give Bruno Richard Hauptmann a chance of achieving the American dream.
All right, prosecution, you're up.
Your Honor, do I have permission to approach the jury? Do any of you have a younger sibling, even a younger cousin, or a child you babysit? Now, I want you to think about that child. Think about how much you love and care for them. How would you feel if they were torn away from you? How would you feel if they were taken without your knowledge and then killed? I am positive that if you loved that child, life would never be the same and you would be completely devastated and distraught. That is exactly how Charles and Ann Lindbergh felt when their young boy was torn away from their family. All the prosecution and the Lindberghs want is justice for the young boy and his life. And that is what you as a jury need to want as well. Justice will be served if you pay attention to the evidence and all the facts that prove Bruno Richard Hauptmann is without a doubt guilty. Facts are not what-ifs, they are concrete evidence. First, Dr. John Condon identified Hauptmann as the kidnapper. Condon testified that Hauptmann's voice, features, and even build were identical to those of Cemetery John or Bruno Richard Hauptmann, which clearly is because Hauptmann is Cemetery John. Taxi cab driver Joseph Perrone also testified that it was Hauptmann who gave him a ransom letter to deliver to Dr. John Condon. Condon and Hauptmann also spoke on the phone. Condon's phone number was found on Houtman's closet wall. Why would he need the phone number of the man delivering the ransom money? Well, because Houtman is who Condon delivered the ransom money to. The ransom notes were proven to be written by Houtman by expert witness John Terrell. Although there are many German writers, other German writers do not have all the factors against them that prove Bruno Richard Houtman is guilty. Bruno also used the ransom money at a gas station. When paying with the directly recorded gold certificate bills, Houtman commented to a worker, he had 100 more just like it. The rest of the ransom was traced back to him and his Bronx home. As you know, Charlie was kidnapped using a ladder. Rail 16 of that ladder fit perfectly into the space of a missing floorboard in Houtman's attic. You saw the floorboard from Houtman's attic. You saw the floorboard from Houtman's attic that was used to build the ladder. Even the rare square nails aligned perfectly. The wood used to make the ladder was specific, and only from certain mills across the country. Although, all the mills had one thing in common. The wood had been shipped to the Bronx, which is where Houtman lives. Houtman also has past experience as a carpenter, which is another factor that proves he created the ladder. Most importantly, you saw the concrete evidence, the ladder, and Houtman's floorboard included in that ladder. Another thing to remember is Houtman does not even have a credible alibi for the day of the kidnapping. Who can go to 9 places in 15 hours, especially in a very busy city, without a car? No one, and especially not Houtman, because he was busy carrying out the crime he had already planned for a year. Houtman also has a previous criminal history in Germany. He broke and entered into the second story of the mayor's home using a ladder. The exact same as how Charles Jr. was kidnapped. He robbed this home, and he robbed 2 women at gunpoint while they were pushing baby strollers. This indicates that he has a fascination with babies and crimes involving babies. He also stole from 4 homes, he robbed 2 women, and he stole Charlie from the Lindbergh family, which shows he has a habit of stealing. He took the $50,000 ransom, even though the baby was dead, and he claims he took the money from Isidore Fish, even though he was the man who collected the ransom. Houtman also entered the U.S. illegally, hiding his identity, so he lied about something major before. Therefore, he has a history of lying. Who's to say he won't lie again? And he has lied again. He claims he had nothing to do with the kidnapping and killing of Charles Lindbergh Jr. This is false, considering all the evidence we have shown you. The defense can make up all the excuses they want, but real, concrete evidence shows that with absolute certainty, Bruno Richard Houtman killed and murdered a poor, innocent child. Isidore Fish is an easy fall guy, considering he is dead. Houtman's loyal friends and wife are obviously not going to say the man that they love is guilty. Peter Sommer says he saw Charles, but do you know how many blonde hair and blue-eyed babies there are? Think about all the people in this room. Just because Gabby has blue eyes and blonde hair, am I going to say, oh my gosh, there's Charles Lindbergh Jr.? No. Houtman is not going to admit to his actions. Houtman is not going to admit to his actions either, because he can't even admit to writing Condon's phone number on his closet wall or even building the kidnap ladder. Certainly, he won't own up to killing the child, even though we all know it's true. Houtman is not credible at all. He has a history of lying, stealing, and does not own up to his own actions. Although it may be believed a gang kidnapped a child, does this even matter? Because he would be part of that gang, so he is still guilty even if he had accomplices. Remember, all the concrete evidence that proves, without a reasonable doubt, he is guilty. He has a previous criminal history involving ladders and babies. He had John Condon's phone number written in his closet. John Condon identified him as the kidnapper. He used the recorded ransom money, and he does not have a credible alibi. Lastly, a ladder was used to kidnap Charlie, which Houtman in fact made because he has previous experience as a carpenter. You saw the concrete evidence of rail 16 from the ladder that fit perfectly into an empty space in Houtman's attic floorboards. Again, I want you to think about the child you love once more. What would you want to do to their torturer if they were hurt? And think about all the facts that prove Bruno Richard Houtman is without a doubt guilty. Charlie's dad, Charles Lindbergh, is an American hero. Not only does justice need to be served for this country, but justice needs to be served for the family and the country. To serve that justice, remember, without a reasonable doubt, Bruno Richard Houtman is a guilty kidnapper and murderer.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that concludes the trial. The summations have been received. You You will receive a verdict ballot. You have 3 choices. You must pick one. Further, you come back with a unanimous decision. There's 3 groups. Okay? Ideally, that's what we want is a unanimous decision. Do they have to reach a unanimous?
And that would be, they have 3 options. Guilty, not guilty, or hung, and then what's the score?
Okay, very good. So on this ballot sheet, you have your 3 options. We, the jury, on behalf of the state of New Jersey, find the defendant Richard Bruno Halpern guilty of murder in the first degree. We, the jury, on behalf of the state of New Jersey, find the defendant Richard Bruno Halpern not guilty of murder in the first degree. Or we, the jury, on behalf of the state of New Jersey, are unable to reach a verdict in the case of the state of New Jersey versus Richard Bruno Halpern. We'll give you an option. The jury is locked with blank votes for guilty and blank votes for not guilty. You are only to deliberate based on the evidence, testimony that is given. Anything that is objected to and upheld, you are not to consider. You may only consider the evidence presented in this case. Make sense? 30 months.
Mr. Lindbergh, please state your name and occupation.
My name is Charles Lindbergh Jr. Charles Lindbergh. I'm a pilot in the Navy.
Hello, Mr. Crawford.
Husband both work. No, you said it would work.
It's a typo.
You don't consider not admitting your true identity and hiding yourself to get there misleading.
Nobody knew I was on the boat.
And Colonel Schwarzkopf, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
You saw Mrs. Phoebe's get your glasses.
The following students to the office: Ryan Biggerstaff, Owen Buchanan, Isaiah Cosby, Hunter Smathers.
So, to clarify, you're not here on ways, only your husband, who is further away from the baby's room, claims to have her.
Objection, that's an
Working at the affidavit, you must take me to the baby. I explained. I have told you before. It is impossible. It can't.